Ms. Atkinson?
I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
All right, excellent. All right, very good. Okay, I'm going to call to order. Are you ready, Sonia? I apologize. You're good? Okay, and we are recording. Okay, I will call to order the Truckee Meadows Water Authority Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, March 16th. We will start with the roll call.
Okay, Hartung,
Here?
Dare, Anderson, Freckes,
Here.
York,
Here.
Hill,
Here.
Jordan,
Here.
Forey, Coletta. We have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. Miss Perry Teal, will you lead us in the pledge this morning? Dr. Perry Teal.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. That takes us to item number 3, public comment. I don't have anyone signed in at this time. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board. Possible board comments or acknowledgements this morning? I will close item number 4 and take it to approval of the agenda. I don't think we need to move anything around. Looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Ms. Jordan. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a stereo second by, I'm not sure who I heard first. I'll take Ms. Dewar. So I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 6, approval of the minutes for February 16th, 2022 for the Tummo Board of Directors meeting. Any emendations?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Hill, second by Ms. Jordan. And again, I have no one signed in at this time for public comment. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That takes us now to item number 7, update on the general manager. Wasn't that 6? Didn't I just do 6?
It's item 7. General manager.
Okay, I have an updated agenda. Am I,
Western Regional.
which? Item number 7 is general manager recruitment. Do you
Yes.
guys have
Right.
something? Yeah, I did 6.
Right.
Right. You said item 6, general manager, is that right? I said no.
No, I think I
item
said
7.
item 7, but all right, okay, item 6. Thank you for the correction. Item 7, update on general manager recruitment and discussion and possible direction to staff in the interview process, in the interview date and candidate selection process. Ms. Atkinson, thank you so much for being with us on Zoom.
Thank you very much. Good morning. For the record, Jessica Atkinson, HR Manager. With me today for this agenda item is Steph Morris, Water Resources Manager. And before I go into the presentation, I just want to take a few seconds and publicly recognize and thank Steph for her help and support through this process. She has experience prior to coming to Tumwa in top-level executive recruitments and has been a tremendous support to me through this process, not only in ensuring the materials were effective, but in making sure that we were following and working within the boundaries of Nevada's open meeting law. So I really appreciate her support. And also, I'm on vacation this week, and so she's volunteered to step up should I have technical difficulties and stand in for me, as well as capture any comments or questions from the board. So thank you, Steph, for your help. We'll start, I don't know, can you guys see the PowerPoint presentation? I'll jump right into it once you guys can see that.
We can.
All right,
We
perfect.
can see it.
During the January board meeting, I brought forward an agenda item requesting direction from the board related to the recruitment of the general manager position, which will become vacant in or about October of this year due to Mr. Forey's retirement. During that meeting, the board approved moving forward with a staff-led internal and external recruitment with the regional focus. So today I wanted to provide an update on the status of the recruitment, the applications we've received, the candidate selection process, and then request direction from the board related to the interview process interview date and selection procedures that I have outlined in the staff report. So we'll start with the recruitment update. The position posted on January 26th that was open from that date through February 28th. We did paid and unpaid advertising, both local and industry sources that helped us cast not just a regional net, but when you advertise with groups such as AWWA, Water Environment Federation, you get actual global exposure. And so we saw that in our candidates that applied, which was really kind of cool. And let's see here, we'll go into our application update. Total during that period of time, we received 22 applications. Of those 22 applications, 10 candidates listed prior water utility management experience and had the requisite background. So we sent supplemental questionnaires to those 10 candidates to gain a better understanding of their background and experience related to things such as overall utility experience, local government leadership and collaboration, budget responsibility, sizes of population served, direct management experience, including numbers and titles of direct reports, management and leadership styles and experience with TROA and or bi-state water issues. So of those 10 candidates, we received responses from 8. 3 from this group were excluded from further consideration, and 5 demonstrated recent experience with a similar scope, breadth, and complexity as TUMWA, and 2 of those candidates ended up being from Northern Nevada, 1 from Colorado, and 2 from the East Coast. I spent time talking with these candidates about the interview process, the requirements under Nevada open meeting law, and all 5 are interested and willing to participate in a public interview process. So that takes me to the next slide, which will go through the recommended interview process. Prior to the interviews beginning Monday, the 21st through April 4th, staff intends to use a SurveyMonkey tool to conduct an anonymous employee survey, asking all employees to participate in the selection of the next general manager by identifying key attributes and or experience they would like to see in their next general manager. The survey results will be included for you in the interview packets. And this tool is intended to provide a line of communication from employees to board members to help inform the process. We thought this was a really good idea to help engage and get them involved. The actual interviews will be conducted by the board in open session. And then to ensure consistency across the candidates, I'm proposing an interview process that includes the order of interview determined at random prior to the interview start, all candidates having equal time in front of the board to interview. We would request voluntary sequestration of the candidates until after their interview. Once their interview is concluded, they're welcome to stay for the remainder of the interviews. The interview would be 3 timed phases with time kept by the board clerk. There'd be an introduction phase, a question and answer phase by board members, and then closing comments. So the interview time would be scheduled not to exceed 45 minutes per candidate. That's my recommendation. And then next slide is the recommended interview date. I recommend that we use the next board meeting, which is scheduled for Wednesday, April 20th, with 5 candidates interviewing at 45 minutes each. It's likely going to need to be an extended board meeting. We'll need, I'm guessing, approximately 4.5 hours. That should account for any general business at the beginning and end, as well as the interviews and the selection process. In my conversations with the candidates, I have confirmed with them that this would work as a potential interview date. So hopefully it would work with the board as well. In the packet for the April meeting, if that's the date that we go with for interviews, you will receive additional information. You'll have all of the candidates' applications, resumes, supplemental questions, any materials that they submitted as part of their application process, a copy of the job description, key leadership competencies, a list of recommended interview questions, an interview guide, and the results of the anonymous employee survey. And then next slide is what I'm recommending as the selection procedures. So once the interviews are complete, prior to deliberation, board members would be provided a ballot to select one candidate to inform board discussion. The ballot results would not be a vote, but rather informational to inform the discussion. Legal counsel would collect the ballots, confirm the board member has identified themselves and their top candidate, and would read the results out loud. And then from that point, the board would deliberate and may move forward with a motion to nominate and accept a candidate. And if seconded and approved by a majority of the voting board members, the motion would also include direction to staff and legal to negotiate an employment contract and complete the background check process. And then that's it in a nutshell. I can answer any questions you have, but today what we're looking for is the board to accept the recommended interview process, which is those 3 timed phases. And then the date of April 20th, which does include extending the session out to account for all 5 of the candidates. And the final thing is accepting the recommended candidate selection procedure. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions and to the board for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. So let me start with just a couple of things. That day could end up being a little tight for, I know, Commissioner Hill and myself. Is it possible with the board's approval to start at 9 a.m. instead of 10?
Yeah, fine with me.
Okay,
Which day are you talking about?
Wednesday,
the 20th,
of
April the 20th.
For some reason, I have a hold on my calendar for Western Water.
So do I.
So
And
I'll
so I
decline
assume-
that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I'm seeing a shaking of the head no for Western Regional Water from someone who I believe will know
Okay.
that.
But couldn't we start earlier in Western Regional Water?
If necessary, I mean, we certainly could, but I want to give us all plenty of time. That's my first comment, and then and my second comment is I just want to make sure I don't want even any quotidian things on the agenda. I want this to be the only item on the agenda. Is that,
If possible, I mean, they may.
yeah?
I think
Mr.
that's,
Flory?
I think that's doable.
Okay,
Sorry, Steph Morris for
Steph,
the record. There
yes.
is one item that absolutely has to go. It's a resolution for a grant application, and it wouldn't fall within the May meeting, so we would need to take care of that.
okay,
paper.
all right.
Sorry.
I mean, all right, that's fine. I just don't want a bunch of items where we're, and this is not a pejorative comment about water supply or any of those kinds of things that we normally get in one of our standard meetings. We just don't, we really need to concentrate just in terms of our time schedule, because I know that it'll end up being a full day. Board,
I've-
hold on just a second.
I think she
Yeah.
had her hand up first.
Yeah,
I just have a question on,
Jordan.
I have a question on the background check. It looked like the background check was kind of at the end of the process. Since we don't have very many applicants, I would suggest that be at the front end of the process instead of the back end. I mean, we'll have 5. You'd hate to get to the end and have 1 or 2 top candidates and then find the
You
background.
mean prior, are you talking about prior to, Ms.
Yes.
Jordan?
I kind of feel
Yeah.
like, could we not do that?
Is that legal?
We can check on that and do that. We would need to check with the candidates in order to authorize. Generally, in these processes, it's after the selection is made, and it's a more extensive background check. So we would be doing Google searches and looking for other information, having the candidates also disclose if there's something that we would need to know. But we can try to do that, but we would have to get authorization from each of the candidates prior to doing those background checks, written authorization.
Which I still suggest, and probably even more so after you just said that. So I think that's prudent to do those checks before the individuals come to us for consideration.
We want to make sure that they haven't torn any of those little mattress tags off that say, do not remove under penalty of law.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Brackes.
So there's 5 candidates standing, correct?
You are correct.
Are any internal candidates?
There's 1 internal candidate.
Okay. I'm going to say that for the reason there is an internal candidate, my hesitations about having this be a staff-driven process versus a recruiter, which I advocated for but ultimately supported the motion of the way we're going, is creating issues. And it really on the background check. And that is after the last board meeting, I, and I presume the rest of the board, received an email from our departed CFO, Michelle Sullivan, who raised concerns.
Excuse me, but I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead, Mr. Coletta.
I really am sorry to interrupt.
Member Beckes, I want to caution you against discussing that matter publicly at this point. There are certain noticing requirements associated with discussing personnel matters. Beyond that fact, the employment of a line employee is not within the scope of the board's authority. So I don't know where the discussion's
So
going.
I'm going to continue, and the board can take it to a vote if they want to shut me down on this, but we talk about all the time emails that we get on matters, and this is on a matter of recruitment. And I am concerned about the matters that she brought forward that could favor or more likely disfavor that candidate, that internal candidate. And so prior to moving forward, I'd like an investigation on the issues she raised to be able to have an adequate background at the time the interviews occur, to be able to consider that person, if it is the person I think, coming forward, his application. Without that application or that investigation by an outside source, it's going to put that person in a difficulty, in my view, to be considered for the GM position. So I want to bring that up, that I feel at this point, we need to give serious reconsideration to the process we're in. And seeing that this, unlike many comments that come to the board, were not included in a packet of public comment. You know, we often get emails that come through to the agency. I'm happy to submit it for public comment for this meeting at this time. Thank you.
Okay,
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Stewart.
Yeah, I was wondering, there was a proposal that when we get to the end, that we all just pick our top candidate. And I would like to propose a slightly alternative. I'm not committed either way, but I just want to raise this as a possible. That we would potentially choose a first and a second choice, and that we would give points to those, so that if we don't come to consensus or there isn't a clear demarcation, that at least we could discuss a second candidate. We'd know that, you know, they got points too. They might have been ranked first by some, the other might have been ranked first by some, second by others, and it would be just good to know. So just, I'm asking you to consider that versus just asking us to put a top name. So I don't know how that falls. I don't even know if I haven't run through all this, you know, scenarios of what that would look like, but I just wanted to at least elevate that concept.
Okay, Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur with Councilmember Dewar and Councilmember Breckus, and I would like to also say that this may be an awesome opportunity for the Tumwa organization to undergo a climate study. Organizations who have very open, transparent processes, such as, you know, hearing feedback from staff members, have.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this agenda item is not agendized to discuss the potential of a climate study or anything unrelated to the
Right,
process.
this is the
for which this
review
that
of
staff is
a
proposing.
candidate.
I think it does have something to do with this because it could delay, that's what my input is. If you would just let me finish, and I think it would possibly delay this process, to Councilmember Breckis's point. So I think that it's important that we understand, you know, what this new director is going into for the culture of the organization, and it is a part of the recruitment of this organization. I think it should be an outside study. I'm happy to bring this up at the end of the meeting, as well as a request by a board member.
Okay. So my concern is that we're making some major changes, which are okay, but, and this is not our fault, but we don't have any representation from one of our member agencies today, sadly. And I don't know why. I was hoping that we would have had an alternate.
Alternate, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why we didn't have an alternate. What's our drop dead date on this stuff? Ms. Atkinson?
Thank you. Hopefully I'm not still muted. I wouldn't say that there is a drop dead date per se. Once you have candidates engaged and interested, you know, the sooner we're able to move, the better. I did, in addition to confirming 4/20 as a potential interview date, I also confirmed 5/18, which is the regularly scheduled May meeting date, as an alternative, just in case we did need a contingency. And it appears that that date also would work for the 5 candidates that we have engaged in the process at this point.
Thus, the hold on your calendar for, and Ms. Breckus, remember we were talking about this at WRWC this morning. There was a hold on the calendar, and we didn't know why, because there was both the 18th and the 19th held. Ms. Jordan?
Reno, that was a hold in Reno.
Oh, okay,
I mean, Reno Chambers.
okay. Ms. Jordan?
I have so my understanding, and my memory could be wrong, I thought we kind of discussed a kind of global assessment from staff as part of this process.
That's what I thought,
I thought that was going to be part of the process as a default anyway. I mean, I think I gave the example of what RTC did as it related to how we hired the RTC director, and that it was a very simple Survey Monkey process that went out to all of the staff, to say, what do you want to see in your next director? What do you believe are areas of improvement? That sort of thing. So I kind of feel like we kind of already set that direction. So I'm not sure that there's a need for a delay unless there's a perception that there's two different paths, of which one is not on the agenda today and one is on the agenda today. So that was my only question, Jessica.
Yeah, so in the recommended process, I do have out there that we would send a Survey Monkey as soon as this Monday with a survey period through April 4th to all staff members, an anonymous survey asking them to identify what attributes and experience they would like to see in their next general manager. The results of that survey would be presented to the board as part of the interview packets to inform the discussion and decision as far as the interview process goes.
Okay, and the only reason I bring that up is I think maybe there's an opportunity to not slow the process down. I mean, I want to have as much overlap time as possible. This is a big job and big shoes to fill. So if there's an opportunity to not slow it down, that would be fantastic. But I think maybe we're capturing.
Steph, of course, for the
hold on,
record,
hold on.
the Survey Monkey survey is in the board packet with the question as you described it.
Okay. Your question's answered, Ms. Jordan?
Yes, it is.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Dewar.
Yeah,
And then Ms. Breckus.
I was going to say something similar to Ms. Jordan that Ms. Atkinson, I thought, had indicated this survey, and it talks about anonymous employee survey, and I guess I had not looked at the questions, but it seems that they could be expanded to the what is in terms of how things are, as well as what you would like to see in a next director. I mean, it seems that we could expand those. And secondly, I want to make sure that in the survey, the RTC, to Ms. Jordan's point, just did a survey, is underway on McCarran Ring Road. And I posted on my Facebook, and a lot of people took the survey, and then they said, well, there was no place to put their open-ended comments. And what it was another link, and they just didn't realize. And so I was able to do that. So what I want to make sure is almost every person that responded to the RTC survey, and I assume it would apply here, wanted a place to write their thoughts, not just, a yes or no, or please rank, or those kind of things. And I assume your survey has a place for that. I don't know if it's limited in word count or letter count, but anyway, there might be under each question an area, please elaborate, or, those kind of things. Could you address that?
Yeah, right now the survey's set up for just one open-ended question asking individuals to identify the attributes and/or experience that they would like to see in their next general manager, and it is a fully open-ended comment field.
Yeah. So could you, to my colleague's points here, is it possible to tweak that survey a bit to gather more information? I imagine if you're going to the effort of sending it out, that you could have a few more questions.
Yeah, so to answer your question, we have an account with SurveyMonkey, so we can tailor it to look however we want. There's no limit on questions. There's no, parameters that restrict formatting or anything like that. So we can have ranking questions, sort questions, open-ended questions. I think that just my professional recommendation is that when you're talking about getting into deeper, like to get a feel for climate type of stuff, it really is not something that can be done in a vacuum and quickly. So for the purpose of the general manager recruitment one, I would say that the questions really should be focused on future focus on, you know, what types of things employees are interested in seeing, or, you know, ranking skills or competencies or something like that, something that can be used by the board when reported back to help inform the process when looking through the candidate materials and interviewing the candidates, I think would be most relevant and probably most helpful as it relates to this process.
Okay, that answer your question?
It does. I don't know if it answers Ms. Hill's request or question.
Okay, hold on. Ms. Breckus.
Yeah, I want to say, to my understanding of recruitments, doing a survey at this point in time is very flawed. And we're in a very make-it-up-as-you-go process because we didn't do an internal recruitment, we didn't go with a recruiter. You do these surveys when you're crafting the candidate profile, what you want this person to look like. Right now, if you do it, knowing there's an inside candidate, maybe two people have never stepped foot in the state of Nevada, it's going to be a referendum on that person, likely. And I think also, I would be hesitant as an employee taking that, knowing that the people who are guiding this survey are likely going to be reporting, could be, to a person in contention for the GM position. So I would not encourage this process at this point. I think the time to have done it was when you were crafting the candidate profile to help do that announcement. I am very concerned, and I will articulate that we are at the point of background checking these people, these 5 people. If you or anyone comes forward without background checking some of the information that I received about what has transpired here in the last 3 months, leading to our very, in my view, poised, well-served CFO, and the issues she raised, it's going to be a problem for that candidate.
Interject again. This is way beyond the scope of this item.
It is,
We are not, excuse me, but the statutes are very clear. Certain people who are being referenced have rights. This item has not been agendized for this discussion.
okay. Well, yeah, I've got Ms. Jordan and then Ms. Hill.
Thank you very much. I actually disagree. I think that this process is absolutely the time in which you do a survey of this type. Now, could the results of this survey lead to a more in-depth one? It could. It could. There might be some things that you find in this, but for this particular survey, it is common practice to ask these. I think it's very effective. I spent 20 years in HR. I speak from experience. This is not a flawed process. I have great faith in Jessica and our team with regards to information that is received and the retention and the privacy of those things and the anonymous nature. I think there's great value in this. And when people sit up here and say it's flawed and that there's somehow going to be some leak of information, well, you've just poisoned the well. I disagree. I think that we have great professionals in this organization, and they will handle this in that manner. And I think this is the correct process. And I think Jessica is the right one to conduct it. And I think we can achieve the goals we want.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jordan. Ms. Hill.
I don't necessarily disagree that this is a good survey to have and good input for the board. I will just say that working in organizations where I receive surveys on what I was looking for my the culture of the organization or the leadership, I was very hesitant to fill those out. Even if they were anonymous, I had a great deal of suspicion. That's why climate studies are great, because they are done by an outside agency and they speak to people in a very confidential manner. And compile that information for the board's review. So I still will be asking for that. I think it's an important part of this. And I have talked to staff to see if we could bring this forward. I never got a follow-up. I'm not trying to delay this process. I just never got the information I needed. And so I still think it's my fiduciary, and legal responsibility to bring this up. And I think it's really important that the board conduct this.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I can move forward.
Any other comments? Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, go ahead, Ms. Jordan.
Sorry. With regards to the comments, and I agree with Ms. Dewar that the comments are really the most valuable, in my opinion, because someone's ranking, if it's a number ranking or a high or a low, I mean, those are very subjective. The comments are the most valuable, and having a comment section right under each question, under each ranking or whatever the thing, is really helpful, because you can sometimes forget something that might have triggered a comment or input, and when you're trying to lump it all at the end, it's kind of, it doesn't work, it doesn't flow quite correctly. So just having that comment under each section, not everybody will fill something in, but those comments are critically important and super valuable. So maybe just that under each question.
Okay. So let me move back. We were talking about the selection process. I'm not in favor of ranking or choosing two. I'm in favor of choosing one candidate. It's a closed ballot, and nobody knows who votes.
Right.
If we had more than 5 candidates, let's say we had 15 or 20 candidates, that becomes a more viable option for me. But when you have a small number of candidates, I think it can ultimately somewhat cloud the situation. And you may not get. As the ballots are read and who voted for whom, it may be clear that you have to go through a second round anyways, and then you can, those choices can be made at that time. That's we've had at the county commission a great deal of experience choosing everything, and believe me, if you go back and you look at our experience, it's from choosing judges to Senate to Assembly to all manner of other boards, and this has, and in fact, 2 county managers. And this has worked out very well for us using that closed ballot system, because what we used to do, and I think maybe other organizations, I don't know if the city of Reno ever did it, but I've seen it at other organizations. What we used to do is we go down the line, and then whomever the chair would choose as the last person could ultimately be the swing vote. So we adopted.
Well, I wasn't recommending
Yeah,
anything like that.
we adopted this closed ballot system so that took the power even away from the
Right.
chair.
And we do it the way you said.
Wait,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm unclear. I really don't understand what a closed ballot system is.
Could I-
mean,
could I-
can you
sorry.
vote in secret?
Go.
Could I clarify?
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
because I think the language is important, and so I think that what the staff recommended was to use a ballot system that would be collected, and the names of the candidate and the board member would be
board member
read
would be
out
read.
loud. It's not a vote, it's a way to inform prior to the discussion and deliberation starting.
As opposed to
So-
making a motion for one person.
We already do it.
So closed
Reno.
ballot,
You guys do?
we,
Yeah, yeah.
everything
We've
has
done
to
it for
be
a long
open
time.
and legal, so it would all be disclosed. So I wanted to be clear on that, thank you.
And again, the only reason I refer to it as a closed ballot is because what we used to do is go down the line.
No.
And which is not a good way, because now by the time even we get to a third or fourth person, everybody knows kind of who people are voting for, and it can sway the vote. Go ahead.
So just a couple things. In 8 years, we've never gone down the line. We've always written down our stuff on a piece of
Okay.
paper, handed in, had it read, or submitted to the clerk and independently. So number 2, I think Ms. Atkinson, just to your point, Ms. Jordan, she just said there was only going to be one question, and it was one open-ended question. There weren't going to be several questions. It was just one open-ended question, just confirming, right, Ms. Atkinson?
You're correct.
Yeah. So just be aware that that's what she's envisioning. Okay, so if we want something different, we have to say that. I'm prepared to try a motion, just hearing from everyone.
Okay, hold on just a second. Ms. Breckus, you have another comment?
Yeah, I want to know about when we get into the interviews. I don't want to be asking questions and be told by someone I can't ask a question. So what parameters are there? Sometimes we're giving suggested questions, and those are great, but sometimes, particularly, there's need for individualized questions. Have you ever worked in a, I don't know, prior appropriation state? If you're from the East, maybe my reference is wrong, but. So we will be able to ask our own questions of our own design specific to the individuals, and they will all be giving consent to have their, whatever these frameworks, which I question, of talking points about individuals will be waived, correct?
No, yeah, and what I was going to say to that, and Ms. Morris and Mr. Folletta, you guys can also chime in on this. I don't think that there's an issue with that, except for the fact that if it breaches any confidentiality. Those are the kinds of things, we have to kind of be, we have to tread lightly, I believe. So Ms. Atkinson, I see want to chime in, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Member Breckeson. There will indeed be recommended interview questions, and then my intent is to provide a guide as far as there's some absolute don't do's when it comes to interview questions. So just that all board members prior to going into the interview kind of understand globally the legalities, the things that could get you in trouble, the things that keep you on the right. But those types of questions that you just mentioned would not be prohibitive type of questions. The only thing that I would ask and that I will identify in my interview guide is whenever possible, except for probing follow-up questions if a candidate responds and you delve a little bit deeper, that the general questions asked by each board member, whatever questions the board member decides they want to ask, are consistent across the candidates so that you are getting a consistent measure as far as the candidates' responses. That would be the only thing that I would ask, but the types of questions that you just went through, minus any kind of confidentiality, like Member Hartung stated, there would be no limitation on those types of things. And so you'll have the ability to use the recommended questions and or to ask your own. Like I said, the only thing I would request is just for consistency across the interviews is that the questions are the same.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Chardon.
Thank you very much. And I agree with that. Only from a personal, it's hard to rank if you're changing in your own personal mind ranking, if you're changing your question each time. But there can be customization of the question as well. You might, what we have done at the City of Reno, which I have found to be very beneficial, is just kind of changing the chair changing the order of who asks the question, because if someone is asking a question I might have asked, I might change it as it gets to me, and then kind of doing that. But I agree, keeping your question the same helps for individually to rank it. Separately, I don't like the assertion that somehow our legal counsel is interjecting as to keep someone from being able to verbalize their feelings on a subject matter, but rather he appropriately so stepped in to keep this organization from a potential HR or open meeting law violation. So I appreciate you doing that, and the assertion that somehow you're going to restrict someone's ability to speak is inappropriate.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I've been listening closely, and I've tried to craft a motion that would kind of hit on all the comments that I've heard, and it may or may not be acceptable to the body. But here's what I would recommend for process, is that we have a complete and thorough background check prior to the interview process. Prior to the interview process, we have an in-house survey of what we should be looking for in a candidate. Prior to the interview, we should have an independent climate survey, which would guide us in our selection of the top candidate, because I may, just as an example, there may be a super good person on, let's say, engineering, but maybe they don't have the depth of management experience I would want based on wherever we are. Or conversely, fill in every blank. I just think it would be a useful adjunct to the process to have that. That would help us guide us in our selection. And that we would, to Mr. Hartung's point, put our top choice on our ballots, for discussion. and that we would bring it back in order to allow time for this process, bring it back on the May 18th, 2020 to have the interview process.
So if I could, Mr. Chair.
2022. Hold on.
I'm sorry, 2022, yes.
22, yeah. 'Cause-
Thank you.
Yeah, because we missed it by
Wait,
a
2
couple of
years.
years. Yeah. Okay, so hold on a second, Ms. Hill. Mr. Folletto.
Yes, I'm just going to advise the board not to take action on the climate study element of the proposal.
Why?
I think that the context of that request does not relate to the specific protocols for selecting the next general manager pursuant to a process that the board has already approved at its January meeting. It seems that the context, based on the comments of a couple of board members, is very clear that it relates to concerns that arise out of a personnel matter that has not been agendized and has no clear derivative bearing on the item that has been agendized. It also implicates the interests of two individuals in relation to their terms of employment, in connection with which the Nevada open meeting law has not been satisfied at this point.
Yeah, well, please know from my perspective, it is not based on anything about anybody. We do surveys here every single year about the performance of our overall staff, and with it's called a customer service climate survey. And I think we haven't hired a general manager for a long time, and we've been extremely satisfied with Mr. Foray. I mean, we made a great selection. We've been very satisfied. And I think this is the exact right time to do it before we make another selection. It has no bearing whatsoever on the comments made. I just think it's a good idea to do before we pick a next general manager.
I appreciate that, but the performance of the staff is not an agendized item at this point, so.
It's not about the performance
it's
of
not,
the
and I
staff.
didn't
Well, you
ask
just
for that.
articulated that you do climate studies to evaluate the performance of staff in the organization.
What I'm saying is, we do them annually for our customers as the overall organization. It's not about any one individual, and it's the same here, not about any one individual.
I appreciate that. I do stand by my advice not to act on this element.
Okay, well, how about this then? I'll just suggest that if you want to drop that out from this motion, that's fine. But Ms. Hill has also offered it as a separate agenda item. And, I can still stand with the rest of my motion, but I'm still going to support that concept regardless, separately. And I think the timing could work as well. So would that be okay, Mr. Attorney Klein, counsel here?
If a member wants to raise it, potentially doing a climate study as a separate
Yes.
agendized item in the future,
Yeah.
that would be appropriate under a later
Yes.
agenda item.
Okay.
The consideration of that, not the consideration of the request, but the making of that request would be
Yes.
appropriate later.
So,
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
All right, so you kind of outlined. Ms. Breckus, you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I do have a question, and maybe I should have made it before she tried to make a motion. Does the Tumwa application ask if someone has a relative who's also employed by Tumwa?
The application does ask that question.
Okay, and if there is any of that, how will that then be vetted and evaluated? And do you have a nepotism policy and a chain of command policy in situations like that?
We do.
Okay, and so if anything is raised by that, that will be included in your background analysis?
We could absolutely include that in our background analysis, but we do have a policy and we do vet that as part of our applicant process.
Okay.
Whenever we have an applicant that marks that box, if you will, and identifies a relative, we do go through a process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Hill.
Thank you. I would be happy to second this motion. My concern is the timing, and we're not able to ask about the timing of a climate study as a part of this process. So I don't know if the timing would work for May.
Okay.
And that's my concern, and it seems like for some reason, we're being guided that we can't ask this as part of the agenda item. When you read the agenda item, this is interview process, interview date, candidate selection process. You can add an additional element to that agenda item. I don't think that is unreasonable. So that I'm open to seconding it. I don't know how I can ensure that is part of something that a packet that the board would receive as part of this process or as a separate element. That's my concern.
Ms. Jordan.
Thank you very much. I think all the ideas are great, and I support all of them. I think it's just a matter of timing. I think the issue of the separate agenda item is one more of just an open meeting law agenda, which I tend to see both sides of it. But my question is, probably if we're going to engage at some point an outside entity to conduct it, they would be the ones that would tell us what the timeline would be. So I don't know that we would even have any control over.
And I was going down a similar thought process.
If
Ms.
it came
Jordan.
in before, great. If it
Don't
came
even-
in
I mean,
after,
Who do we engage to do that? Because we would want it to be an outside firm. What would be
the
the
city of
scope?
Reno did one, and I'm trying to, I don't remember the entity the outside entity that facilitated it. It was super helpful and beneficial. I just don't know what the timeline.
Well, yeah, again, the timing and the scope and.
That may take a
and all of
minute.
those kinds of things. Go ahead, Ms.
Thank you, Steph Morris, for the record. A lot of times, these kinds of surveys, if they haven't been done in the past, the outside consultant will want to talk to the board and get information from the board about the scope. And so in order to be able to really address what the board is looking for, you would want to bring in a consultant who would sort of scope the outline and the time, as well as what specific sort of baseline information the board wants to receive from employees about the organization. And if there's direction to staff, we are able to go and start talking to consultants and figure out who would even be available to do this kind of thing. In other organizations, I've seen this process take a year or longer. So it depends on the scope, really, of what the board wants, which would, I think, be a future agenda item or for staff to bring back in an agenda item with some information.
Right, no, and I see exactly, because you could have field workers that it would be completely different for versus internal workers versus, when I say internal workers, I mean, there's just so many fingers that go out in this. And so it's hard to just define the scope, sort of easily. Ms. Jordan?
Thank you very much. I would second Ms. Dewar's motion with the understanding that this additional survey would come back for
An agenda item?
an agenda item to
Yeah.
discuss and pursue it at that
Yeah.
time.
At our next meeting?
We have a motion and a second on the table?
Not yet, not
Oh.
yet.
I'm sorry.
Made a motion.
No. Well, she made a motion, but,
And-
so she listed the background check, in-house surveys, independent climate study, which we've determined that would be best
I've
suited.
deleted that from my
That-
motion.
May I?
Yeah,
The single choice, and then, May 18th. That's what I understood it to be.
yes.
So, and is there more? Background check, in-house survey, you've removed the independent climate, survey to
From this
come back.
motion, yeah.
To come back. Now, I'm just saying, so you removed that, so then there was a single choice ballot, and then, May 18th.
That was correct.
Okay. Okay,
Now, I'd like to make a comment on the motion.
go ahead.
Okay.
Well, we don't have a second, but go ahead. That was. Oh, you did second that motion,
Yeah.
okay.
I want to make it clear, every element of this has an evaluation process associated with it and is not meant to be pejorative. For example, doing a background check does not presume that we know the answers to that background check. So I want to make it clear to our attorney and everyone else that nothing in our process, including the one top candidate, is meant to disadvantage any candidate or advantage any candidate. It's just a process. And I want to, that's the way I'm going at it here. Number two, the May 18th date may be modified by us at a future meeting based on other decisions that the board makes. So for right now, that's my recommendation. but-
Possibility of May 18th?
Correct.
Okay, we can add that in.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, seconder agrees, okay. So before we get too much farther down, we've had a lot of discussion on this. Let me make sure that I just do a little housekeeping here, okay? Do we have public comment at this time? I don't have anyone signed in or any cards, but I just want to make sure that I have covered that. All right, seeing none, I will bring it back to the board. So we have a motion by Ms. Dewar. We have a second by Ms. Jordan. Is everyone clear on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify.
Wait, I wanted to discuss.
Oh, okay, all right,
Yeah.
under discussion.
Yeah. Look, I think TUMWA's a great organization. I think it's the best-run public local entity in the region. This is a big issue, and I've been very pleased with the management. This is a big issue. And when we decided how to go forward on the recruitment, I supported, not my preference, which was getting a national recruiter to have that arm's length for staff. And a little wrinkle has come up in my view, and I think staff's in a very difficult position. I think the climate study concept, there's no guarantees anything would be done in time to help inform the decision, and frankly, we're a little too far into the process, I think, to have one. I think at this point, we need to bring out the process anew and do a recruitment fully with some other work of analyzing issues in the organization. That is what I think is the most fair to the staff that's being told to do this, to the candidate pool, one candidate in particular. So I will not support the motion. I think we need to do this right for the integrity of this organization. I'm sad to see that my colleague has made the motion and supported it, but I think they're following and replicating a really flawed process that is not going to go well and leave a lot of hard feelings all around. So if the motion fails, I will make another motion to bring it back in our next meeting to renew the discussion and the recruitment and other measures. I don't see a hurry. Mr. Forey is here till October. There is so much precedent and ability, if he has a lot of vacation leave booked up and plans on leaving July, to bring in an interim if we have not brought the person on board. Thank you. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Okay. All right.
I have a question,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. I wanted to hear from Ms. Hill one more time about where you are in this motion and what you're thinking.
My concern is exactly what was brought up of, there are concerns that have been brought that the board has not properly been told, what is going on those concerns. I'm not even sure the process of the board being told, when, there are, allegations of issues. And additionally, I think a climate study is very important. I actually agree with Councilmember Breckus. I think the rush is concerning to me. I think we should do this right. I think I also will be voting no on this today. And I think that there's a real opportunity for us to ensure that we're doing a transparent process for this.
Is the alternative, if I may, Mr. Chair, is an alternative to this motion that you're thinking about? Could you just explicate that so we understand?
Well, I feel very restricted by.
Well, I
the-
understand about the climate survey,
Got
but
it.
is the issue with the date or?
Yes, the issue is the date. And
Okay.
so I understand that we have 5 candidates. I'm really excited we have 5 candidates. And I still think a regional recruitment is something that is doable. That's the one semi-disagreement I have with Councilmember Breckus. But on the rest of it, I do think that there needs to be an opportunity for the board to be vetted on concerns that have been brought about the organization. Additionally, I think that there's opportunity for us to learn about how we can recruit the best candidate using a culture study. So I do think that I'd like to pump the brakes on, can we look into these things? And again, I did ask this of staff. I asked how it could be brought forward, and there was no follow-up. So I'm not trying to derail
but this is helpful to
issue.
me. What if I did not put the date and we just proceeded apace and we see where we are and I just delete the date? Do you think?
That I could vote for that.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
I think that's
Well,
valuable. in the
Mr.
event
Chair, I'd like to
the
amend my
other
motion
things- Yeah.
to drop the date, and we will be informed as the staff moves forward as to the timing of the interview process.
Okay. Seconder agrees.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're just background check, in-house survey, single choice ballot.
Mm-hmm.
We will bring the independent climate survey on a
Separate item.
separate item, under likely item number 19.
Okay.
Okay, and seconder agrees with that. Under discussion again.
Yeah, I think that if I was watching this meeting from the East Coast, I would say, oh, they're still thinking they might change the process, ain't coming out, not doing it, something weird's going on. And a candidate who is putting herself on the line from another state, another region, is probably doing their diligence and watching this. And so right there, I think that statement, with the motion amendment really continues to complicate and make this process problematic. Thank you. And I will not support.
I have to just comment, I have been a candidate in the East Coast applying for a job in Nevada. And I've been in Nevada applying for a job on the East Coast, both ways. And both processes took time because they wanted to make a good decision. And it did not affect my interest in coming to the agency at all. I was excited that they were doing a thorough vetting and knowing that if I was selected, which I was in both cases, but if I was selected, that they made a thorough, conscious, clear choice. And I felt really good about it. So I'll just put that out there.
Okay. Under discussion.
I just want to say thank you so much for considering my thoughts, and I can vote for this today. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion on this item? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Does staff understand the motion?
Yes.
Okay, because I've got it written down as well. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion carries 4-1. Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Atkinson. I apologize for interrupting. Oh, you're still on deck here, aren't you?
I am. I have the next two agenda items. My kiddos are downstairs waiting for us to get moving for our next San Diego adventure today.
All right. We apologize. Thank you.
No worries. The next ones are quick ones, so.
Okay, so I'm going to open, Mr. Folletta, may I open item 8 and 9 simultaneously? Because they're essentially they're to appoint the same person, but there's two citations here.
Yes, you can take those items together.
Okay? Do you need separate motions, or would a single motion suffice?
I would prefer two separate motions.
All
one
right,
for item 8
but
and
we
for
will
item 9.
open item 8 and 9. Ms. Atkinson.
Perfect. We have two closed post-retirement medical trusts at Tumwa. Each are guided by written trust documents that identify trustees and qualifications of trustees. And with Ms. Sullivan's resignation, she was a trustee on both of the trusts. We are looking to appoint a replacement through the expiration of her term on both trusts, which ends December 31st, 2022. That confirmation that we're looking for from the board would be for Matt Bowman, current CFO of Tumwa, to replace Ms. Sullivan on the Section 115 Post-Retirement Medical Trust Plan and the 501c9 Post-Retirement Trust Plan. So I can, absent any questions, I can just move into Agenda 8 and frame it up for the board.
Okay?
So staff recommends that the board confirm the general manager's appointment of Chief Financial Officer Matt Bowman as trustee to the Section 115 Post-Medical Retirement Plan through December 31st of 2022.
Okay? Questions?
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Is, she just added a word that I didn't know. Is Matt Bowman our new CFO?
Yes.
Oh, I was not aware of that.
Yeah, that's Mr. Forey.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
We
Yeah, that's
posted the position and received applicants, and Mr. Bowman was selected as the CFO.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
Yeah, okay. That's under the general manager's purview,
Well,
I
I
believe.
would make a
Yep.
motion
Okay.
to approve item 8.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Hold on just a second. Is there any public comment on item number 8? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That takes us now to item number 9, Ms. Atkinson.
Same thing, staff recommends the board confirm the general manager's appointment of Chief Financial Officer Matt Bowman as trustee to the 501c9 Tumwa Post Medical Retirement Plan Trust through December 31st of 2022.
Questions or comments for staff? I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve item 9.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you so much, and please apologize to your family for us. Thank you we really do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
You look like you're just in a hotel room. Couldn't you have chosen a better place to go on vacation than just a hotel room?
I'm going to do it right now.
No comment. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right, that takes us now to item number 10, water supply update. Mr. Hauk, welcome.
Morning, Mr. Chair, board members. I'll be brief. Quick little water supply update for you, Bill Hauk for the record. So as requested last meeting, it was asked to create a key takeaway or a summary page, and here it is. So key takeaways for this month. Lake Tahoe is 9/10 of a foot above the rim. February was our second significantly dry month in a row. We've experienced record low levels of precip basically since the end of December, when snowpack at that time was well over 200% of normal. Right now, we're about 80% of normal in the Truckee Basin. Despite that and decline in the runoff forecast, the most recent models show that we're still going to have normal river flows through the first week of November, which is well beyond our peak demand season, which is still good news. And anything can still happen. But what happened the last 2 months, we've just had no meaningful accumulation up there. There's been no meaningful snowfall in over 2 months. And this is shown in the NRCS streamflow runoff forecast. I've kind of summarized all the forecasts, the beginning of the month and end of months for the last 2 months. And if you look at the top row, Lake Tahoe inflow or rise, you can see that early in January, when snowpack was above 200% of normal, they were predicting almost a 2-foot rise in Lake Tahoe. Well, now, since we've had no snow in over 2 months, we're looking at a 9/10 of a foot rise. So pretty significant downgrade in the runoff forecasts. Snowpack, again, in the Truckee Basin on Monday was 78% of average, 78% of normal. And you can see that in the black line. Basically, snowpack, or the water content in the snowpack's been flatlined for over 2 months now. Fortunately, it's been rather cold still at night, and that, snowpack's been kind of just holding with very minimal accumulation up there. Are we setting up for, our third consecutive dry year in a row? I'll say it's looking more and more likely as each day passes that we're not getting storms up there. So, and this is an interesting graph I just want to show you. So the snow water equivalent, or the water content of the snowpack, is indicated in the black line right here. And we can go, really one of two ways from here. We can go the way we did in 2013, where things start warming up and snow melt begins to occur and it all just runs off. Or, the storm doors could open and the storms we need could start arriving. And that happened in 2003 when we were in a very similar situation. We, into March, storms started coming and we built snowpack all the way through April into the first week of May. And at this point, we just don't know what's going to happen. But, I don't want to write the season off yet, but.
So which line was it on that map?
So the black line is where we are today. And, in 2003, we were in a very similar situation, and all of a sudden we started getting the storms. And all the way through April and even into the first week of May, we were building snowpack, and we ended the season above normal. Conversely, that could be the end of it, and it starts warming up, and the snowmelt starts running off, like happened in 2013. So just trying to illustrate the two different years and what may or may not happen. But right now, what I can tell you is the latest projection, the best case, is for about a 9/10 of a foot rise at Lake Tahoe between now and its peak.
What's the elevation of Lake Tahoe right now?
6223.9.
Okay, so 9/10 of a foot.
Another 9/10.
Right.
And you'll see that here. The blue line is
7,223
actual elevation. Yeah, 6223.0 is that.
Okay.
Yeah. You can see actual elevation since
Each
2011.
foot is what, 122,000 acre feet?
Roughly, yeah.
Okay.
The projected rise is about another 9/10 of a foot, and that's indicated in the gray line through the rest of the year. So about a 2-foot increase in storage from last fall at Lake Tahoe. And with that being the case, projections for Truckee River flow, while they're not as good as they were, it's still going to get us well through our peak demand season, and projecting normal river flows through the first week of November, as you can see here in the gray line. Most of the other reservoirs in the system will also make a noticeable recovery this year. And our upstream reservoir storage, our reserves are in fantastic shape right now. We have about 48,000 acre feet in storage right now, between what we have in Donner and Independence Lakes and what we have in storage under the terms of TROA. By this summer, by Memorial Day, we'll have over 60,000 acre feet in storage, which is significantly more than we've ever had in storage. And by the end of summer, we'll probably have closer to 65,000 acre feet in storage.
These are storage numbers, not capacity numbers for those reservoirs.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Except that, if I may, Mr. Chair, this one yellow bar says, if I'm reading it correctly, 47,000 acre feet, and it says 18% of total current storage, system storage. Is that
Yeah,
right?
so what I'm trying to say there is that is our, all of the, so the 47,653 is the water that's managed by Tumwa right now. That's between Donner and Independence Lakes and the water we have under TROA. And that represents 18% of all the water that's in storage currently.
Well, is a different number maybe, is that our storage or?
That is
another-
ours.
That's ours.
So
That
it's
is-
18% of the total buckets we have.
Correct.
So that's
No,
helpful.
of the total, if you look at all the buckets, or if you look at it
Everyone's
as one
buckets.
giant bucket, we have 18%.
But what I'm saying is, what about the buckets that we control? Like, could we fill any of these buckets that is Tumwa, like at the areas that we're allowed to store? Can those be filled more?
Yeah, and they will be, for instance, Donner and Independence Lakes, they will fill this year. The Independence will fill from 11,654 to 17,500.
Right, that's the maximum
right.
capacity.
Donner will
Donner's
fill
That's
from-
what I'm asking.
Yeah, Donner will fill this year from 3,398 to 9,500.
500,
And then
right.
once the river and flows and runoff sets up correctly, we'll begin credit storing again. And so by the end of the summer, we'll take this 47,653 to about 65,000.
Okay. In your next update, could you, in addition to the yellow bar, could you give us that bar, which would be the percent that we can totally store, whatever that number is, that Tumwa can store?
Yeah, I could take a swag at that. I mean, it's really,
No,
really
I'm saying
changes
for your
from year
next-
to year.
I'm saying
you
for
know.
your next update.
Sure. But
Could you do some calculations and just tell us, like,
I can take a swag.
here's the Donner bucket of that, or here's the one Independence, or here's whatever, here's what we could, and here's where we are. That would help.
Okay.
Yeah, because we don't own all of the storage.
Exactly.
In, whether
Right.
it's Prosser or Boca,
Right, we can take
29,800
advantage of
acre
space that's
feet.
there, and it may be in Prosser this month, it
Right.
might be in Stampede the next
Right.
month.
Right.
We move it around.
Right,
to-
we move it around,
Totally
exactly,
understand.
as the water flows through the system.
Right.
Exactly.
Right,
But
we're always,
some of that water is like for downstream releases, for low flow, for fish, that we don't own,
yes, yeah.
and we don't control,
Right,
and it's not for us,
right,
for potable use.
right.
And so all I'm trying to do is, on the things we do control, how do we stand?
I'll try and do a better
See what you
job
can-
next month.
not better,
yeah,
just additional.
Representing that for you. I'll take a
Yeah.
stab at it.
It would be very interesting, I think,
bet.
helpful.
You bet.
Proceed, Mr. Houck.
So, Mr. Hartung asked last month about the status of our overall regional groundwater. And so I took a stab at that this month as well. So overall, the status of groundwater wells within our service territory is good to very good. Positive upward trends in water levels in almost all the regions, most notably in the DWR Stimgid areas where we took over in the merger in 2015, and that's due to conjunctive management through passive and active recharge. An example of that is on the Mount Rose fan in the what we'll call the Arrow Creek zone.
Right.
That consists of Arrow Creek well 2, 3, and Stimgid number 6. And the takeaway here is if you look at about 1990, you can see a significant decline in water storage or groundwater levels. And between 1990 and 2015, you can see that just that downward trend where they were supplying customers with just groundwater alone. And you can see clearly in 2016, right after the merger, through resting these wells and system interties, we were able to complete, the groundwater levels have increased noticeably.
Good.
And since 1993, over the last 28 years, we've recharged just about 40,000 acre feet of, take it, treated Truckee River surface water and injected it in key locations within our service territory to maintain groundwater levels. This year, we recharged at Lakeside, Holcomb View, and Silver Lake. And we also began recharging this winter on Mount Rose Fan at Arrow Creek 2, Stemgate 11, and Tessa East wells.
With the Whites Creek water?
Not yet. We're talking Truckee River system water, not Whites Creek water yet, but that is the plan.
Yes.
That is the plan in the future.
What's the timing on that?
We're very close, aren't we, Mr. Enlow?
Next
Within
month.
a month.
Man, thank you. Go ahead.
We're very close.
But how much have we pulled out since 1993?
I would say almost zero of the actual recharge. We've been pulling out water that we have a right to, for
Yeah,
each well, there's
yeah.
a certain amount of water rights. And that's something we could definitely look at and bring
Yeah.
back to you if you wanted. And if you wanted more of an in-depth discussion on groundwater and hydrogeology, I would suggest bringing, maybe Greg Pohl back in the future, and he can really talk to groundwater if you'd like.
I don't remember him.
But
But I would really like that, because if you start getting dry years, you're just obviously not getting that valley recharge. I mean, we spend so much time thinking about snowpack for the river stem, but we don't spend a lot of time thinking about what the dry years are doing to the natural recharge of the valley
yeah.
and vis-a-vis the pumping. And that's where, as I read about the West, that's where the trouble is.
Yeah, clearly we saw, results of pumping the system hard in 2015 when we ran out of surface water and started relying more on the wells. Some of the wells that we recharged this year, the Holcomb Lane well right here, that was one of the ones where we saw kind of the levels starting to decline. But with some recharge and then, not pumping it as hard the next year, it made a full recovery within 1 year. But again, if you really want to learn more about our ground, I'd suggest, our staff members from the Hydrogeo team or Greg Pohl come in.
Okay. Ms. Stewart.
One more question on this. Could you go back one slide? No, it was the graph it was the graph that was on the wells. Maybe it was, there you go. So I just wanted to let you, other TUM1 members board know, that last night I had my neighborhood advisory board meeting. That's where we review all incoming applications and one of them that we reviewed hasn't even gone through the staff vetting, but they put it on the neighborhood advisory board anyway. And it includes 335 homes, if I recall the number correctly, south of Mount Rose Highway, right around so those that know where Galena High School is, those who know where the Redfield campus is, it's right south of the Redfield campus.
James Village, is that what that is?
No, it's a brand-new development, nothing to do with St. James Village,
Oh, I don't
and
know. I'm asking.
in between the two. And one of the questions that came up from a number of NAB members was, where's the water coming from down there? And I'm just being very informed by this, because it seems like it's right there with the other Mount Rose Fan issues. And nobody knew how to answer that question. Mr. Foray was actually on, but for a different topic, right? You were on the meeting, but for something to do with water tank storage. So that question didn't get answered. I think most of the TUMWA staff had left by that time. I think there was not just you, but someone else on there.
Danny Rotter was on there
Yeah.
for some period of time, but I left while he was still on.
Okay, but anyway, no, they were on, but then they were off, but this question came up, and so I did raise concerns. So it's something that our decision-making at Reno on a development is separate from your decision-making about whether there's water to serve that development. And I just wanted to highlight that in your awareness right now while we're looking at this graph. Okay.
Okay, go ahead, proceed.
Then I'll take questions.
Okay.
Additional questions?
I was going to say, I think we've probably answered them along the way, which is actually easier. Then that way you're not bouncing back and forth and, people have to scratch down. Yeah, so any other questions for Mr. Houck? All right, thank you so much. Great job. Okay, that concludes item number 10. That takes us now to item number 11, discussion and possible action on adoption of resolution number 301, a resolution to approve funding for one or more of the projects recommended by the Truckee River Fund Advisory Committee and authorization for the Community Foundation to fund such projects from fund proceeds. Ms. Folsom and Mr. Enlow. You're there, magically.
Morning. Sonia
Welcome.
Folsom. Yes, thank you. All right. Okay, before you, you have the spring RFPs from the Truckee River Fund. They had their meeting on February 18th where they had 5 proposals. They had about $153,952.16 available for funding. Of the 5 proposals, they approved 4, and the funding approval is $135,505. That would leave $18,447.16 in their account until the FY 2023 budget is approved for Truckee River Fund funding. On page 2, you have a list of the 5 projects, just so you're aware of who submitted RFPs. Number 260 was not approved for funding, and you'll see that of the total match that they require is about 25%, which is $91,698 of the $135,505 approved. We had the Sierra Nevada Journeys submit their Watershed Education Initiative program for the school year of 2023. And this funding will serve 750 students, 28 classrooms within the 10 miles of the urban corridor of the Truckee River. They conducted over a 4-week period. They've added a virtual session as well in their program. Number 259, you'll see the map on the board on the screen here. Let's see if I can zoom in. Okay, so 259 has 2 locations along the Truckee River, the Donner Creek Confluence Project and the Boca Unit Restoration Project. The goal is to reduce erosion and excess sedimentation and improving water quality, as well as increasing floodplain connectivity and enhancing riparian vegetation. The key for this project is that there's cost share from the town of Truckee and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Okay. Number 261 is the Mount Rose Noxious Weed Monitoring Treatment. They remove noxious weeds in the in the Hunter Creek watershed. And after they do that, they reseed the treated areas with native seeds and projects to protect the water quality of the Truckee River. I'm going to show you where that particular one is here. Okay. So here's the Truckee River in purple. Here's the Mount Rose not Mount Rose, sorry, my bad. taking language from you, Chair. Here's the orange is the where the fire. What was the fire right there? Sorry, it's right here. So the green area is the Mount Rose Wilderness boundary. The impacted watershed area is in blue. The Hunter Creek fire is in orange, and all of these dots is where they're going to do this cleaning and reseeding of vegetation. Any questions there? The main point is to reduce erosion associated with the current use of the trails and hikers. All right, and then let's see, that was 261. 262. I'll bring up the other map. Oh, not that one, sorry. There we go. So 262 is, again, along the Truckee River. This is the Caltrout Truckee River Access Improvement and Bank Stabilization Project. That's a tongue twister. So this project is going to build out a series of small terraces along the bank of the Truckee River that will stabilize erosion and reduce sedimentation along the Truckee River. And it will improve the point of access for a variety of users such as kayakers, fishermen, etc. And that's it in a nutshell. All right. Do you have any questions for me? Mr. Enlow is here to answer questions about the project that was not funded and to give you some information about that program.
Tell us about number 260, Mr. Enlow.
Yes, I just wanted to provide some clarification. I mean, the reason that project was not funded was because of a lack of funds within the Truckee River Fund. It's really a very innovative program that everybody supported, but I mean, even all the other applicants were trying to cut their budgets back to accommodate this program, but we just couldn't pull it together. So I'm just telling you that in May, staff may come back as part of the O&M budget approval process. So we typically fund the Truckee River Foundation $800,000 a year. We may request you to divert a portion of that funding, $50,000 or more, towards this National Forest Foundation effort to be focused on the Whites Creek, Thomas Creek, Galena Creek watersheds as kind of a pilot program, because with the Mount Rose water treatment plant coming online, everyone thought it was very important to really have that forest ambassador on the ground, talking to people, letting them know that Whites Creek in particular is a source of water now for our community's drinking water supply. So don't be surprised if you see a request as part of our O&M budget approval for diversion of some of that $800,000 of the Truckee River Fund towards that effort.
Yeah, so it had nothing to do with lack of merit, it had to do
No,
with just funding.
exactly.
It certainly,
It was a very interesting meeting. Everybody
yes.
was trying to find out where they could cut. And you can see that some of the projects actually did reduce funding.
Sure.
They didn't want to, the Truckee River Fund Advisory Committee didn't want to fund overhead costs. So those two projects reduced their funding by about $5,000.
understood. Okay, questions for staff? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Hill.
I don't have any questions. I just really want to say thank you to the Truckee River Fund Advisory Committee, and I think there are members here, so I don't know if you want to recognize them.
Ms. Terry Stedich is here, and Jim Smitherman, yes.
Smitherman, yes.
Thank you so much for reviewing these for us, and I'm looking forward to seeing the last proposal come before the board.
Okay, all right. This is for possible action. Ms. Jordan, did you have a question? Oh, no, oh, okay. Let me just ask for public comment. Is there any public comments on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comment, bring it back to the board. Ms. Jordan, the floor is yours.
Move to approve.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Jordan, second by Ms. Hill. Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That takes us to item number 12, discussion and possible action to enter into a funding agreement with the National Forest Foundation for the Ladybug Project. This sounds like a movie. It sounds like like a murder mystery, the Ladybug Project.
And also good branding.
And good, yes, that's right, exactly. The Ladybug Project, fuels reduction project above Stampede Reservoir. Ms. Morris and Ms. Steeland. Is Ms. Steeland? I don't,
Miss Steeland has been helping me on this effort, and I greatly appreciate it. She's in Switzerland. She said she skied to Italy for pasta yesterday, and I have to admit, I'm a little bit jealous.
I do not even want to hear this
Yes.
right now. This is,
So I think somebody's going to switch Steph Morris, Water Resources Manager for the record, to the PowerPoint presentation. And given the timing, I could talk about this for hours, but I'm going to move pretty quickly through this and just get to questions. Essentially, I presented last month about the partnerships that we're starting to develop with the U.S. Forest Service, National Forest Foundation, who implements projects on U.S. Forest Service land through their Master Services Agreement, the Nature Conservancy, Nevada Chapter, Truckee River Watershed Council, and other partners that we've been having discussions with. And this project is a pilot project that would directly benefit our community's water resources because it sits right above Stampede Reservoir on the ridge in a down gradient, and it would be treating 2,500 acres that is a direct nexus to our water supply and maintaining capacity in the reservoir from sedimentation coming in. So I do want to circle back and say we have been working on a 10-year sort of vegetation management strategy in the Middle Truckee River watershed, and we are going to be bringing that back with more plan. But this was a project that all the environmental work is complete, and there was a funding gap, and this is, again, a direct nexus to our community's water supply. Just why we're doing this, I'll skip through it because I did give a lot of information last time, but this arrow with 9 is Region 5. This is where our watershed sits. It's been identified as a top priority for Service Region 5. And here is basically, red is bad, green is good. I could get into a lot of the modeling details, but this is some modeling that was done by TNC about fire probability in the future. And red is high, not only for potential future burns over the next 60 years, but also for medium to high risk fires. And I will show you here, this is blown up. This oval is where the Ladybug project sits. So you can see that's in a lot of that high and medium risk burn area.
Is there significance in the name?
And the Ladybug project.
No, is there, is it
What does
like?
it mean?
Yeah, is there significance?
I honestly don't know.
Or did somebody just decide to
I
call
think they
it the
just called it
Ladybug
Ladybug
Project?
Project,
Okay.
but I promised to find out and
No, I just
bring it
wondered if there
back.
was some significance.
I assumed there were a lot of ladybugs in the area, but yes.
Okay, yeah.
That map that shows the frequency of fire burn, who'd you say did you said TNC?
The Nature Conservancy?
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, it's interesting because I don't see, it doesn't go into our urban footprint, and I ask for that every single time when we're looking at the WUI. And I wonder, when did they do that, or what data source did they use? Do you know?
Yeah, we could this would take an hour, but I'll just tell you, it's something called landscape conservation forecasting. And this particular paper that they wrote was the first time that they looked at sediment loading from fire danger, so it's kind of a novel. They've done and run this model
Yeah,
throughout
okay.
Nevada. I can pull other information
Okay,
about other areas that they have done it.
yeah.
But basically, they're taking they're using mapping to take the vegetation current, and then they look at past burns, and then they're forecasting
Okay.
based on different inputs. Then they input it into ecological models for different sensitive either species or habitat.
Okay, so they're doing primary research on, burn, analysis, landscape analysis, rather than relying upon, say, reports or secondary source of burn. Yeah, interesting. Okay,
These are,
thank
and
you.
these are possible burn areas.
Yes, these are probabilities. So
Probabilities,
it's a prediction
exactly.
of basically the red is
Yes.
higher fire and more intense fires.
But the legend shows times burned over 60 years, so they must have some certainty that a
These
place.
are not, and I always get confused by that too, but this is from their work, but it's what they're predicting over the next 60 years, the times burned. So it's a predictability,
gotcha,
not
gotcha,
that it
gotcha.
has actually
Not
burned.
prior,
Yeah, I get,
future,
Future 60 years.
yes.
yes. Okay, so again, the issues we're concerned about are water quality. We look to other examples. I want to just skip, this is a picture of the Hayman Fire in Colorado. This was an inlet around Chessman Reservoir. We have a lot of the same kind of terrain near Stampede. You could see just the total amount of sediment blocking out that drainage. It's a real issue. And I wanted to show you a quick video that Mr. Houck took, and this is of the Martis Creek fire, which was a relatively small watershed, and it's a small input into the Truckee River. This video was taken not after the first rain event from the fire, but the second or third. And during that, you can see as the water's coming in, just how black it is, and just the amount of material and sediment coming in. And then as it scans out, as it's showing right there in the Truckee River, you can see the relatively clear water and the amount of sediment coming in from that fire. And again, I just want to emphasize, this was something that we lived through. Tumwa didn't divert water for a couple days, turned off diversions from the Truckee River because of this type of sediment loading and organic material coming in. So again, very small watershed and very small fire compared to what we need to be planning for. So the Ladybug project, again, protects Stampede Reservoir. It complements prior work that's been done on U.S. Forest Service land. There's multiple partners, and TAMWA's contribution for this project that staff is recommending is $250,000 in the next 2 fiscal years for a total of $500,000. Provides flexible local cost share to efficiently complete the project. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So this map, the important part of this map is showing the sort of orange color is the Ladybug project and the acres that would be treated. And then the green is previous fuels treatments that have already occurred. So this one complements other work that's been done around the reservoir.
Okay, so this is not, back up just a minute. Ms.
Whoops,
Morris.
I'm going forward. There you go.
There, yeah, so it's not just a 2,500 acre piece, it's a number of sheds,
Yes.
of watersheds.
It's-
So we're
it's-
looking primarily at watersheds themselves.
It's one watershed, all draining into Stampede. The difference is, and I'll show you on this.
But it looks like there's different creeks is my point.
Oh, right. There's a lot of different runoffs coming in.
Right, yeah,
Yes.
that's,
Yes.
and
And you
perhaps I
can
phrased
see
it improperly.
here on the project in the top right, where I'm going to try to put the cursor, is there is a runoff directly above
Right,
this.
right,
burn
exactly, and
area.
I can see some down at the bottom that would
Right.
also, it
And
would
then
also
right
affect.
here,
Right,
and here is
exactly.
the outlet to the dam, so.
And so it's just shy of 4 square miles, which, 2,500 acres, I mean, that's a lot of land, but when you think of it, it's, I mean, with the amount that surrounds, it's really not that big of an area.
No, but it's a critical area for protecting
Right,
drainage
exactly,
into the watershed.
exactly.
This is a very detailed map that I will not bore you with. I think I will just point to the interesting things. It's not boring, I should say that, but it's a lot of information. It's 2,500 acres treated. There's a road reconstruction of about 8.33 miles, which is really important because that also contributes to runoff and getting sediment into the reservoir. There's about 32 acres of hand thinning. There's about 1,700 acres, a little bit more of timber removal and mastication with 10-inch diameter. And then another 636 acres of 16-inch diameter. And then there's some roadside hazard treatments for about 36 acres. And then there's a fire line construction, which is building a fire line break, which is about 14 miles. So that's the entirety of the project. And then the other interesting thing here is these green areas are within the project area. Those are sensitive habitat, and so those areas would be fenced off and protected during the work. And then just in case you haven't seen any of it, I just thought it'd be helpful to see the picture on the top left is a thinning project in Dog Valley that TNC funded. And you could see on the bottom, the same area. On the right, on the other side of the road, there is no thinning. Just kind of gives you a concept of the work. And this one is other work TNC did that Truckee River Watershed helped fund on Independence Lake. And you can see the kind of before and after, the before on the left and the after on the right.
So is this a slash and burn project, or is it a mulch project where they're actually putting the mulch back into the soil itself?
There's some mastication. They would do timber. Some of it would go off through timber companies, and then there would be potentially some biofuel, and then there also is potentially some burning, controlled burning later.
Okay.
Okay, and so just kind of the cost breakdown. These are the existing funding sources. USDA Forest Service is $1.4 million. California Wildlife Conservation Board is funding at $650,000. Nature Conservancy, $1.1 million. There's some private donations at $35,000. So there's an unfunded amount of $650,000. And TAMWA's contribution over the next 2 fiscal years would be $500,000. I will say that we are looking, the work with TAMWA's money could proceed, and the work would be going on over the next 3 years. And so we are looking for other funding sources to close that 150 that would still be left. I'm feeling confident that someone will either step up or we'll find some other state funding. There's a lot of money that just is coming in from federal as well. So you can see it's about 13% is what we would be funding. And again, there's a direct nexus to our watershed or to our water quality and reservoir storage. So I just want to talk a little bit about what this would look like. A lot of times state and federal funds have restrictions on what monies can be spent for. So for example, sometimes they won't allow for road reconstruction, but the road reconstruction is really critical for the project to go forward. And so TUMWA's funds could be used flexibly to insert into areas where those grants monies have restrictions. Plus it also helps to meet the local cost share, which oftentimes is, can be 25 to 75% depending on the grant funding. So it really helps to move these projects along more efficiently and not sort of get held up with trying to move money around. And I do want to say the National Forest Foundation has a master services stewardship agreement with the U.S. Forest Service. So they effectively act as an arm of U.S. Forest Service to help move some of these projects along. They provide staffing, they provide a lot of resources to U.S. Forest Service to get this done. So the funding agreement would be with the National Forest Foundation, who is tasked with completing this project.
Okay.
And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Okay. If we have no questions, is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. What would you like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to make a motion to support the staff report. I also just want to commend staff and the team for putting this forward. This is something I know that my constituents worry about, that we're progressively looking at climate change issues with our water supply, so thank you for that.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We've asked for public comment. Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Folsom, before we move forward, can you ask the city of Sparks to either turn the air conditioning down, or can we move outside because I think it's warmer?
On pretty full blast.
It is cold up here. I feel like I'm at Costco in the
the freezer
in the
section.
freezer section. Yeah, that
Where you walk
that
into the
cold
room.
case. Yeah, I mean, it feels exactly like that. Wow, I was about to take a break and go out and get my jacket, but that takes us now to item number 13: discussion and possible action on the TUMWA tentative budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2023, and draft capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2023 through 2027. Mr. Bowman.
Morning, members of the board. Matt Bowman for the record. We've got our tentative FY 2023 operating budget and 5-year CIP plan. I'm going to walk through the operating budget, touch on CIP briefly, and then Danny Rutter's up here to help give a little context around our capital improvement plan. You should have a staff report, and within that staff report, there's a narrative like you get every year during this time talking about the budget. There's also full income statement, cash flow, expense element table, as well as a listing of all the projects in our CIP this year. So I want to first start with sort of a recap of our fiscal planning timeline as we move through the year. So here we are in March. We have our tentative budget and CIP, which we are going to ask for approval from this board. In April, we will take this budget to the Standing Advisory Committee, and we'll also file it with the state of Nevada as part of our state doc, which is required by NRS. In May, we'll bring back the final budget for the board to approve. We'll then file that with the state of Nevada as required. And then in October, we will bring to you our 5-year funding plan, which is a forecast that we use, and that's kind of where we really focus on rate setting and seeing what we need to do to cover our costs. So I'm going to start with just a summary of the income statement and change in cash. You can see the first green line is operating income, then change in net position, which is essentially bottom line net income, and net change in cash. I want to start and point out, you see a pretty big jump there in change in net position. And you'll hear this a few times during this presentation, but what we have in there is contributions from City of Reno as part of the American Flat Project, the APW facility that you're all aware of. In accordance with the ILA that we have, City of Reno will fund 70% of that project. TUMA will fund 30%. We know that that project isn't fully approved. It's in the design phase, but we've got it in our budget, and we're optimistic that it will move forward. The way TUMA recognizes the contributions from City of Reno is a capital contribution. So we recognize the asset on our books on the balance sheet, but the capital contributions come in as a contribution, and that affects the change in that position. So definitely different than what we've seen in prior years as far as the bottom line. So I wanted to point that out. In addition to that too, we also are projecting higher developer contributions. So just connection fees. We've seen that over the last couple of years. 2021 was a big year. 2022 likely will end up pretty substantial as well. And so we're projecting that for 2023 as well. So that's about a $14 million increase in developer contributions. Net change in cash, I want to point out here, we are projecting a $21.4 million decrease in cash. It's a bit of an interesting presentation because included in that is our CIP spend at 100%. But as we know, we typically spend about 80%, 70 to 80% of our CIP, but we have to include the whole amount in what we file with the state. So ultimately, our net change in cash is typically and has been closer to zero. And I'll cover that in some later slides. So we'll break that down a little bit. Operating revenue, we have $120.2 million projected. I want to focus on water sales. As you can see, that's the most substantial component of our operating revenue, makes up 90 to 95%. And we are assuming in our model 2.5% rate increases this May of 2022, and then May of 2023. We are estimating about 1.5% increase in connections. That's roughly 2,000 a month, and that's what we've been seeing, and that's what we're projecting. And as you know, weather can impact our water sales, and that's always the wild card. This chart breaks down our water sales revenue into the high-level categories that we have. You can see residential being the largest. It makes up about 74% of our total water sales revenue. We'll move to operating expenses. I want to start by pointing out salaries and wages, which we're projecting an increase of 10.5% or $2.8 million. And that's a bigger number than what we're used to seeing. And what comprises that is 4.75 of the increase is related to headcount. 2.75 is related to step increases, which is employees moving through the wage bands. And then we have a 3.5% labor market index. And what that is for TUMA, we call it LMI. It's essentially a cost of living increase. That number, as of right now, is preliminary. And there is an ongoing study that we have being done by a third party. And we're waiting for additional information to make that final determination. I don't know, and I don't expect to have that updated before the final budget necessarily, but we'll have a final determination before we actually put those increases into place, which would be in July. The labor market index is really a study of just that. It's a little different than cost of living or CPI. As you know, that CPI is through the roof right now, and that's something that we are definitely paying attention to. So again, that's temporary, and we'll see where that ends up. Services and supplies, another area where we are seeing increases in prices, and that impacts us, most notably fuel, as you can imagine. Although you can see it, fuel by itself, that's about a $200,000 increase year over year. And then chemicals is another big cost for us, and that's about a $200,000 increase year over year, just because of prices. We are paying attention to that across the board, and I think what we might see here as our existing contracts come up for renewal is we'll likely start to see some of those increases. But that's something that we are paying attention to and we really try to emphasize that negotiating contracts is important for TUMWA and try to be strategic as best we can to shield ourselves from these price increases.
Mr. Bowman, hold on just a second. Mr. Folletta, I need to step out and take a bio break. We don't have my vice chair here. Can I just allow Ms. Dewar to?
Yes, the meeting members.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. I just wanted to make sure.
Please continue.
All right. Within our services and supplies line, we also have an increase for contracted services, which includes an increase for additional contracted security, expense meter installation, landscape maintenance. And then we're also seeing insurance expense increase each year. Last year, we actually experienced a larger increase, mainly on the property side. Our increase year over year was between 15 and 20%. We think we're going to be under 10% this year, and that market has just gotten really tough. Luckily for TUMWA, we have very solid claims history, and so we're going to be on the low end of that market increase, but we are seeing insurance expense increase year over year. Move to non-operating revenues and expenses. The only thing I want to point out here is just our interest expense year over year. It will be reducing as we continue to pay down principal. So this chart shows where we were in FY16 total debt outstanding. The dark blue is our senior lien debt, the green direct borrowings, that's mostly SRF, and then the yellow is commercial paper. And as you remember, in FY21, you can see the commercial paper dropped off. We moved to direct borrowing. We refunded commercial paper through direct borrowing with Wells Fargo, and that essentially de-risked any interest rate increases because now all of our debt is fixed. And as we continue to make scheduled payments, you can see that that principal number reduces. That helps our interest expense each year. This is exciting. I don't know how many of you saw this, but we did receive an upgrade recently from Fitch from AA to AAA on our debt, and that's nice to see. It helps us with the ability to go to market to get additional debt if we need to. We don't have any immediate plans for that, but it's certainly an element of flexibility that is nice to have. This is the last section of the income statement, so capital contributions. I want to point out, I touched on developer contributions here, and these three in particular is where we're seeing increases. It's a pretty big increase year over year when looking at the budget, but our actuals have been very high. So we've increased that in the budget to reflect that. The way we develop this forecast is sitting down with our new business engineers, going over the areas that they work on and looking at really what they know is coming, how much capacity is left, and try to come up with an estimate of when these projects are going to come through. We really don't know that when they're going to come through, and it's a timing. Timing can really impact that, but we do have an increase on that line for that reason. Contributions from other governments. So I mentioned the American Flat Advanced Purified Water Facility. This is where we have included City of Reno's contribution, 70% of the construction costs that we would expect to incur during fiscal year 2023. So that's why that number is so large there. And you'll see that project is in the CIP as well. This is a summary of our cash flow. So cash flow from operations, from capital financing, and from investing. And as I said at the onset, what we actually expect this to be at the end of the year is likely closer to zero. That's where we've been in recent years, and it's a nice place to be. But we have an increase in capital spending of 37.8 in the CIP, which includes American Flat. That's offset by City of Reno contributions of $21 million, and then also the increased developer contributions that I mentioned. So this graph shows our cash flow history, and I think it's kind of interesting. If it goes back to fiscal year 16, the blue line is cash flow from operations, gray is cash flow from investing, orange cash flow from capital and financing, and then the yellow line is the net change in cash year over year. So You can see in fiscal 19-20, relatively flat. 21, we saw an increase. We had additional developer contributions in 2021. That number was pretty high, as well as our water sales number for the year was pretty high. FY 2022, we're projecting to be a little lower, closer to zero. 2023 shows as lower here, but again, I think in actuality that will be closer to zero as well, simply because of our 80% spend of CIP, which is included in the chart at 100%. And that's it for the income statement. I'm going to touch briefly on some of the numbers in our capital improvement plan. And that chart down at the bottom there shows funding sources of capital spend FY 18, 19, 20, 21, and then projected 22 through 27. You can see that developer reimbursed funding is relatively flat, although increasing certainly, and then customer rates increasing at a relatively steady pace there. And I do want to point out this is the one line that jumps quite a bit. That's where American Flat is. It's categorized as reimbursement, as well as part of that project is in developer fees also. I want to point out one thing on the grants line. You can see it's zero, but this will change when we bring back our final budget. Just as of this week, President Biden signed the FY 2022 omnibus, and included in that was an earmark for $3 million for American Flat. So that's very exciting. That grant will be shared 70-30 between Reno and Tumwa. Reno will get the 70% share of that grant, but that's exciting. Should that project move forward, it was $3 million. So 900,000 of that will be shown here for Tumwa. That's what I just mentioned. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Danny to talk about CIP.
Thanks. Danny Rauter for the record. I'll let you know that Matt and I played all-star baseball when we were 13. He carried us most of the time then, as he is now, so.
So that was last year?
A couple years ago.
A couple years, all right, all right.
And so when we talk about our infrastructure, one of the things that I've started to see over the last couple years is an increase in the amount of larger facilities that we need to bring forth to continue to meet demand, to continue to meet our reliability requirements that Tumwa has for ourselves, continue to hit our, some of those natural resource goals. And so I started looking and I said, man, why does this feel so crazy? And I looked, if you look at combined infrastructure between our system, there was this continued increase in tanks and wells and pump stations through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and it just kept decade over decade over decade. And if you look, as everyone can remember, 08 just drops off. There was hardly anything built development-wise from 08 till about 16. So it was about 8 to 10 years where it was mostly reliability focused, replacement focused, that sort of thing. If I look at all the things that are in our CIP that could come about, tanks, pump, and this is just tanks, pump stations, and wells, not all the water mains and reg stations that could come about. There is a significant increase in this decade over the next 8-ish years. And so, is there text on that? Yeah. So I've taken a look and said, okay, right now I've got 47 of these projected. So the blue being wells, green being booster stations, and orange being tanks. And so that in and of itself, compared to the last 10 years, is nearly tripled. But the thing that's also on my radar is really I'm tracking about 80 of those between things like Silver Hills, Ascente, Terrasante, Canyons from last night at the NAB, Daybreak. So I think what we had happen is we had this growth, we had big things like Arrow Creek and Saddlehorn and Double Diamond and Damani Ranch and Somerset and Wingfield, where big infrastructure was built. Then we had the downturn and we just built that out till we couldn't anymore. And I think we're getting to that point where there's really no more of those things left until we need bigger pump stations, more tanks, higher up, bigger pipes to deliver more water. So I point that out, one, because it's in the CIP. There's a lot of these things that are identified in the CIP. There's a lot that aren't, that could come through the door and say, we're ready to go. So I just wanted to point that out and prepare everyone that this is something we're heading into, and it's gonna be a challenge. I think we're ready to handle it. I think we've done a good job of staffing and putting a bench together for TUMWA as a whole. And I think we're ready to tackle it, and I just wanted to put that out there and point it out.
So let me ask you a question, Mr. Rotter, because I think that this is important. Are tanks and those kinds of pieces of infrastructure that accommodate growth, does TUMWA pay for that, or are those conditions of approval that TUMWA can place on the, the applicant, as it were?
So two different ways to look at it. One, if it's specific to a project in and of itself, developer pays for 100% of it.
Right.
Pump station and the tank.
Okay, not the well. We dig our own wells?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then if there's more of a regional significance, like for instance, Verdi, a portion of that is directly funded by the developers. A portion of it, in the case of Verdi, is existing customers because it's giving us redundancy.
Right.
And then there's a portion of that actually going to another area fee paid for by developers but fronted by TUMWA.
Okay.
So there's a couple different things, but the majority of the development-driven ones are paid by, development is paying for anything driven by development.
Okay.
There's just different ways we handle it.
Do we have, in those areas where, let's just say, there might be 5 developments going on, does TUMWA have a SAD mechanism, a special assessment district mechanism, so that those 5 developers we can say, okay, look, we're adding this capacity, we're adding 4 tanks and this many pump stations and et cetera, so that they don't have to upfront it, but that the water rates that would be charged to those individual customers would ultimately reflect that infrastructure.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we have access to an SAD because we are not a governing body, a legislative body.
Okay.
So any SADs would have to come through county or cities.
Okay. I wonder if that's something that we need to look at in the future, so that those things can be, potentially dealt with. Because I mean, I guess the question is so since we would not have the ability to create an SAD that would directly impact those future customers, how is that infrastructure paid for? Those 5 tanks or, those pump stations, how does it get dealt with? Do the 5 developers have to come up with it, or does TUMWA have to come up with it and then?
Majority of that, from a regional perspective, when there's lots of those, is handled by our WSF fees, our connection fees, which we updated by areas just here recently.
Right.
Any of the balance it would be directly funded by developers.
Yeah, but I guess my question, and I understand that, but will it keep up? That's my concern, and what I don't want to happen, and I think that this board is supportive of that. I'm not posing a question. I'm gonna just make a statement. What I don't want to happen is those kinds of projects, those pieces of infrastructure that have to be added to the system get put on the backs of ratepayers across the system. I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
I would not support that.
I would say we are very cognizant of that when we're putting together the CIP and our WSF fees and our facility plan. And so while we are continuing to stay ahead, we're not getting too far ahead where it's strapped to the ratepayers. And I also saw Mr. Forey raise
So
this.
before we, maybe something that we bring back at some future time, I'm not saying we do it now, I know we've got a lot on our plate, but maybe something that we bring back is how an SAD mechanism could work, and maybe, Mr. Folletta, that you guys could potentially help us understand, and we would bring an item back specific, so I mean, you guys don't need to make any major notes, but how that would work, and if, let's just say, as an example, maybe the process works this way, that TUMWA says, you know, we've got development occurring in this area. We recognize that infrastructure has to be brought in and it has to serve just these particular people. We also recognize that we don't want to damage groundwater supplies and that we want to keep everything balanced. We do have the capacity in the system. And how Tumwa, our board, could potentially ask for an SAD, whether it's through Washoe County or through the city of Reno, so there's some mechanism that we could utilize to fund those kinds of things, and with an indexing to make sure that those pieces of infrastructure were properly paid for over time. Okay, yeah, sorry.
I really like that idea, Mr. Chairman, and look forward to seeing what that would look like. I also, when looking at the CIP list, since we're on that topic, it would be really helpful for me, and maybe this is in our major CIP plan that goes before the board, I forgot, but to list out of these projects which are helping us with conservation, because obviously, you know, investments in different CIP projects help with technology and help with reduction in water use. So I was just curious if we could have that brought back to the board as well.
Yep, yeah, we can do that.
I mean, I don't know if we're in discussion now or you're finished, but do you just have one more slide?
Yeah, one more
Okay.
slide, just
Yeah,
takeaways.
yeah.
No, it hit me on this one is
Yeah.
because we were talking about the 47 new projected and tracking 79.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I brought that up. And forgive me, I didn't mean to break my own rule. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just to wrap up the overall budget, water sales up, operating expenses are going up, non-operating expenses relatively flat. Capital contributions are up, American Flat, and also growth developer connection fees. Our net change in cash is lower, although, like I said, I expect that to actually be closer to zero. 5-year capital spending is increasing. One thing I forgot to mention is we just submitted an application for a Bureau of Reclamation Title 16 grant. Steph Morris did a ton of work on that, specific to American Flat, and that program could fund up to 25% or $30 million for that project. So we're very hopeful. What we understand is they typically do not award in the first year of application, which is this year, more likely to award next year. Although our feasibility study that we were required to submit a couple of months ago was approved, and we weren't sure that it was going to be. So that would be a really nice offset to the cost of that project. So I wanted to mention that. So that's it. So I think we're ready for questions.
Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah, great presentation. I've been through enough finance directors now in different places to know each one kind of starts to do their own thing, and looks at things differently, and that's great. I appreciate it. I guess, a few points, observations is one, this agenda is very much differently described than the Western Water that had a date and setting of the final adoption. So that law that says you have to do your tentative at the time and set your final, we're inconsistent with our two bodies. That's more for legal counsel. And I'll let you know, there was a time where the city of Reno never even took action on a tentative. I asked the finance director, what's this down there at the state? It's that. So I think there's a little room for different interpretations, but, I like that the point's been brought up. So I thank you on that. The development contributions going up, okay, I know you're having a lot of discussions, but they look a little higher than, I've maybe from this glance feel comfortable at this point. I mean, who would have known when we were looking at all the COVID money that we were going to have war in Ukraine, and, interest rates, everything. So, we'll see. It's always good to have something out there. And then, the good thing about budget is you do it annually and you look again, see how you did, and then you refine your projections. The 80% spend down, I thought a couple budget years ago, we said that if an agency as capital heavy as us was doing 65%, we're doing pretty well. So I thought, driving it down to zero and an 80% spend down is higher than we've seen in past years. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. I'm not asking for any response, it's just, maybe things to help you go further. I am curious if the salaries, not the benefits, but maybe one of those two, you said there was 10% and you broke it down. If any of those were retirement payouts or severance. So, maybe that could be for the final. The hillside tank issue is one that maybe I'm more versed to give thoughts on than a lot of the regular budgetary ones. And that is having lived through the boom of 2006, 2007, 2008, sitting in the Reno Planning Department where all those came through for approvals, all those tanks. There were a lot of them back then. Tumwa went through a lot of energy having them go through the Reno Planning Commission. And then some of them became stranded assets. We know that, and some are now, kicked in, were kept alive and going. 87 sounds off the hook crazy to me. And, these are growth. This is growth in the WUI, where there's risk to come sediment the river stem, right? So we need to understand what the tanks usually are pressure and they're higher up, and they're not necessarily a great reflection that we're growing in the most conservative manner for our environment, for our safety, for our water supply, and also for our housing supply, because someone's going to be paying for those somewhere. And that's why the land use plans really want you to be able to, recycle your land and balance that with your green field. So let's always keep that in point. This isn't an agency that's taken positions that we're going to be growth policy related. We're more of a go get that hill engineering mindset, but let's always remember that. I would endorse not necessarily an SAD discussion about the water tanks because they think you have timing issues, but it's really understanding a methodology in collaboration with others, not just your new business, people who come in with their, stars in their eyes about their projects, but understanding what is the most feasible 10% of those to go, because they've got other encumbrances. And that, in my view, is the real problem in managing and understanding and bringing on new growth, is you're talking to your folks and you've got a number of 87 and someone else is over here talking roads and something. And with that, I think you do have problems building, because when we learned at TMRPA on a Central Valley experience, 10 counties or so, when everything gets approved, nothing gets built. So we need to sync up our investment on those water tanks with the most realistic ones and put our focus there. And I would love to see the water tank discussion in that manner, just a methodology to know how we're going to do it. But I know that your area fees really do, and you're constantly on it, on revising those, really does put us in a good position, in tremendous contrast to the City of Reno sewer utility hookup fees, which have been flat since 2014. I mean, think about what that's done to that sewer fund. So great job in a lot of ways. But I think I think I would take the water tank discussion in a different route than just SADs.
Okay. Yeah, Mr.
I do want to comment on two things. I tend to agree with you that the contributions number seems really high. But it's comparable to what we saw actually in 2021, sort of where we're headed, at least for 2022. And at the end of the day, this budget will not impact customer rates in any way. We're going to come back with the funding plan, and that's really sort of a more aggressive approach to setting a budget. That's where we actually do take the 80% CIP and we say, well, this is what we're actually going to do because this now impacts customer rates. So.
Yeah, I mean, if Reno did that instead of just living on a CPI, which is the easy way to live for budgeting, I think Reno Sewer Fund would be a much better partner with us on American Flats.
And one other comment too, I just wanted to confirm that there are not any retirement or severance payments in that salaries and wages budget.
Okay, so I know everybody wants to ask a bunch of questions. I'm going to lose a member here, which means we'll lose a quorum in just about 15 or 20 minutes. Okay. So go ahead.
I won't ask a question, then I'll just make a statement that I concur with what Councilwoman Breckus just said. And last night you were there on the canyons. So here you have an issue where you have a very high tank, which is very expensive. You gotta redo the whole pump station to get the water up there. And I just, in terms of entitlements, one project's ad annexation hasn't gone through tentative map that you're planning to serve. The other one's gone through tentative map, but has been 2 years out, or at least a year out with no sign of a final map. So I'm worried about us, it's kind of, when do we build, when do we invest relative to when things are approved and ready to go? So I would appreciate this conversation too, and the other one about, I like Mr. Hartong's concept very much, which is, that would be a good example. You have two projects that are right next to each other that both need a tank. They should be probably sharing costs. And what if there were two more? That maybe that area, and it's very high and rugged, needs something like this. So, okay, thanks.
Okay. So let's get through this for possible action. What would you like us to do today, Mr. Bowman and Ms. Rowe?
A motion to approve the budget,
Okay,
the tentative budget.
hold on just a second. Do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the tentative budget.
Okay, have a second?
Second.
Have a motion by Ms. Breckus, second by Ms. Dewar. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, let's look at these things, Mr. Forey, and staff, for the things that we really need to get done.
Pardon me?
What do we need to get done? We got about
We
15
have
minutes.
one quick land item.
Okay, all right, and that's item number 14.
And Mr. Chair, we only need 4 for a quorum.
Oh, we only need 4 for a quorum? I thought we needed 5 for
That
some
was
reason.
Western Regional.
Okay, well then, forget it. Okay. Ms. Morris?
Steph Morris, Water Resources Manager, and I have with me Heather Edmondson, who's been promoted to Lands Administrator. We have a 2-person lands team that's awesome, and this is a very quick item. So
Okay.
you'll be seeing more of Heather for these surplus property type transactions. And this one is to adopt a resolution 302 to approve the transfer of ownership of approximately 36,000 square feet of surplus land. And you can see the land is on the map in red. And it's located next to an existing well, which is shown to the right, the kind of triangle parcel in yellow. And this land, as you can see, that we're proposing to transfer to the Reno Sparks Indian Colony for no consideration, is currently planned to have in blue shown there. It's a 20-foot path along the river, which is a project by the city of Reno, Reno Sparks Indian Colony, and the RTC. And then as well, this land is already encumbered with an existing sanitary sewer line easement. So there's very little that we're able to do with this property. And we've determined that we don't need it, staff has determined we don't need it for any water service purposes.
Okay, so in this agreement, would RSISC, would they be able to agree that if we needed to go back in and add anything on that easement, that there would not be a problem with that? I mean, we have an existing easement there now, right?
Correct.
Right, so in other words, even if we have to go back in and pull it out for whatever reason, or do anything, or make any additions in that easement, would there be a problem
So
with that?
that's for a sewer easement, not for water. And when we did look at and talk to engineering, that there wasn't any need for further purposes. Otherwise, we would have retained an easement for water purposes on this property
Okay.
as part of the transfer.
Exactly. We have enough room for staging on our property.
Okay, yeah, and this is less than an acre. Okay,
The only easement we're going to need is a tiny access off of Coonsley just to get to the other parcel.
I see, okay.
This major intersection, can you just say what it is again? It's, what roads?
Coonsley and
Kitski
Kitski.
Coonsley.
I just can't read, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah,
I
no,
can't
no,
read
yep,
it.
yep.
Kitski.
It's right there by Mill Inn Fabric.
Coonsley.
Oh. Okay, thank you, that helps. We know where that is.
It is an institution.
And they're building a trail with who?
It's a proposed trail with the city of Reno, the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, and RTC.
Got
It's approximately 2,400 feet, and staff believes that that's a good use of that property to improve the riverfront.
Yeah,
Okay,
motion
Alright.
to approve.
hold on. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back. Have a motion.
To approve.
Have have a motion by Ms. Stewart, second by Ms. Hill. We've asked for public comment. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. So let's, actually, we'll be okay. It won't matter. Item 15, Mr. Enlow. Miss Doctor, sorry. I'm having a little bit of a back issue. Can you?
Different
Oh, different kind of a doctor. Oh.
Different kind of doctor.
Different kind of a doctor. Darn it. Lydia, it's nice to see you.
You too.
So we just wanted to give you a brief update on the status of our work on the Palomino Farms project. I think we came before, it's been a number of months since we've talked about this, but there has been a lot of activity going on out there, primarily our hydrogeology group. I just really want to recognize them because they put in over 2,500 hours of staff time drilling wells, taking water quality samples, soil samples, and so forth over the last 6 or 7 months. So, I mean, I think everybody remembers this is a project that was jointly funded by Reno Sparks, Washoe County, and Tumwa to look at the feasibility of Palomino Farms as a site that could be used for both recycled water irrigation like we do elsewhere within the community, and also look at it as a water banking site for Tumwa where we could store significant quantities of water for drought mitigation, water supply resiliency, and so forth. So just trying to set the stage. We will be back most likely at the May board meeting presenting the results of our feasibility study. So included within that will be information on all this hydrogeology work, water quality work. There are challenges with this project related to water quality, but I don't believe anything that cannot be overcome. Glad to report that I think this site is a very favorable site in all respects. We didn't get the kiss of death like we did out at Bedell Flat a few years ago when we spent a lot of time and effort and just came to the conclusion that this site won't work for the intended purpose. So a lot of work going on, not just related to hydrogeology, but our partners have been looking at using the site for irrigation. How do we deal with return flow issues, keeping the river whole with, if you take recycled water out, how do you keep the river whole downstream and so forth? I know Steph Morris and John Zimmerman are engaging with representatives of the tribe on a more regular basis. So hopefully, I think there's some misperceptions out there that hopefully that communication will help address going forward. So I wanted Lydia here to just talk a little bit about the public engagement process that we had out there too, because it was pretty substantial, and I'll just let her tell you about it.
All right, thanks, John. Lydia Teal for the record. So public outreach is a huge component of this. We wanted to be very transparent at the beginning of this, very early on. Even if we had several questions, we still had to answer through the feasibility study. So we started out with our communications specialist at Tumwa. Robert Charpentier has done a fantastic job of creating a website. The website has frequently asked questions, describes the project in depth, and what we're looking at answering with the feasibility study. And then from there, we built upon and had a series of public meetings. So we had 3 public meetings. The first was July 2020. And this was an informal meeting where we introduced the concept and really the feasibility study, drilling activities, what they'd be seeing out there with the drill rigs. Followed up by that, we had a November Washoe County CAB meeting for the Warm Springs. And that was, again, building upon the first meeting with information and answering initial questions. And then we just had our 3rd meeting. This was in February, and it was more of a town hall style where we had representatives around the room from City of Reno, City of Sparks, Washoe County Planning, Tumwa, along with Tumwa hydrogeologists. We had the state engineer's office there to answer questions on domestic wells. We also had Western Regional and TMRPA, Tumwharf was there. So we had a long list of representatives, along with a national expert, public outreach expert on recycled water projects. So we had a full stack of staff there to answer any questions. I think overall, the public was appreciative that we were there to answer questions. I think we got a lot of great questions that we, take to heart, and some of them were really good questions that we had that we'll look into. And from there, we had volunteers, property owners for domestic well sampling to help us expand our database with our modeling efforts. So overall, I think it's been very positive, and we're looking forward to continuing the public outreach component of this.
So, Mr. Enlow, may I ask just a fast question? Do we have any effluent lines going out there? Is there any purple pipe heading out there right now?
So the purple pipe actually goes out to Mark Murrieta, the gravel
Right, to the
pit that's
gravel
out
pit?
there.
Is it sized?
And there's actually quite a bit of capacity
Okay.
where Tumwharf could supply a considerable amount of water to Palomino Farms to irrigate the farmland out there without making any improvements to their reclaimed water system, other than obviously a pipeline to get from Sparks out there along the highway. Same thing with Tumwa. Our water lines go out to about that same location. And so it would take, we could actually send water out there by gravity. But so one of the things we're looking at is being able to bring water back. And honestly, that's probably the biggest issue that, the public has questions on. We're talking about banking water out there, but we're putting water out there to be able to bring it back when we need it, if and when we need it.
Right.
And so just really trying to satisfy their concerns on, hey, whatever, we will put more water out there than we would ever bring back, and we're willing to commit to that in whatever permit approvals are necessary with the state engineer and so forth. And I think we'll bring back to you in May, kind of a very enlightening kind of a concept of how we can not only store water out there, but by using the reclaimed water to irrigate the farms, you get passive recharge too, that helps build up the groundwater table. So there's I'll say a big hole out there right now underground. Over the years, they've withdrawn about 80,000 acre feet of water out of storage in the system. So water levels have dropped over 100 feet in many locations. And what we're looking at, what we feel is feasible, is that we could basically restore about 45,000 acre feet of that storage amount in the aquifer, raise the water table back up without kind of creating, I'll just say, shallow groundwater impacts in other parts of the basin that might negatively affect people. So in essence, there's the potential to create an underground Boca Reservoir out there.
What's the water quality out there? Because there is so much agricultural. Do we have high levels of nitrates?
So, good question, and that is one of the challenges. So it's naturally occurring, naturally occurring nitrates. We were thinking just because of the farming operations, there might be fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides, that type of thing. None of that. It's so similar to Spanish Springs, high nitrates built up in the soils with irrigation. It drives some of that nitrate down into the water table. And it's really pretty amazing work from our hydrogeologists, what they've been able to uncover with all of this, because in some of the heavily irrigated areas, that nitrate has been flushed through.
Right.
In intermittently irrigated areas, it's still kind of in the unsaturated zone between the surface and the ground. And they looked at unirrigated property, and there's just a ton of it in the top 20 feet. So it's just amazing how that works. And so that would be one of the challenges. How do we mitigate the nitrate? And we think we've come up with a reasonable plan that we could do that from a water quality perspective. Okay. And then also there's arsenic and fluoride in the water, because to the west, there's some geothermal influence out there. So like the BLM horse property and the horse facility, Ironwood horse facility that's out there too, they have water quality issues that they have to deal with. So it's that type of thing that we're looking at. How do we kind of mitigate and manage these potential water quality issues?
One last question. It's not terribly far from the Rocketdyne plant that was, I mean, they basically sealed that whole area off. Is there any nexus between those two?
No, Rocketdyne's a non-issue for us, so,
Okay. We're positive.
yeah,
Do we know how far that plume goes?
yes.
Okay, all right. Questions? Yeah, Ms. Breckus.
Look forward to May. Exciting to hear that the feds have come in. It's a big price tag, 34 million. That's like real money. And I'm going to be looking really careful at the acquisition of this property and appraisals. I just think if, prices are being negotiated for this land or a lease, they need to be based in some sort of real money acquisition. I know COVID money is out there and people seem to, be capable to pay above market price without appraisals, but when we're talking about the ratepayers, whether here or the Arena Sewer Fund payers, I'm going to be looking for appraisals and negotiated property prices for purchase and lease. And that's going to be really important to me. And send it through a friendly condemnation if we can't come to terms. And that's the way the world works, to look after everyone in these sort of property acquisitions, in my view. Thank you.
So just as a clarification on next steps, so May, we're going to bring forward this feasibility study result. We're really not asking you to make any decision at that point in time, because then, there's still some issues that need to be resolved. The interbasin transfer issue with the state engineer, we've had initial discussions with him. There's the county area plan,
Warm Springs area.
Warm Springs area plan and conformance review issues.
Correct.
Things like that. And to Ms. Brex's comment, it's 34 million is just one piece of the total cost of this. There's a cost of infrastructure, both on the water side and Tumworth side.
Right.
Does this make sense? And so we will take, I'm not going to commit to a time frame, but I will say several months beyond May to continue having these discussions, really with everybody. Does this make sense for us as a region financially? Because it's a big investment for everybody.
And one of the things that I'll be looking for is, okay, we've got Purple Pipe going out to Martin Marietta, water lines, but delivery lines coming back. Because I'm assuming there'll be, you're not gonna push water and then pull water in the same line, I'm assuming.
Actually, on the potable line, we are.
Is that right?
Because, think about it, and we would use the water to recharge in the winter, like this time of year. We have excess capacity, send water out there.
Right.
Line will be shut off for a few months. Then in the summer, when we need peak capacity back in Spanish Springs, we could pump some of that water back.
Okay.
And so we would only have one pipeline. Obviously, the reclaimed water line would be a separate pipeline.
Of course, yeah. Okay, all right. Any other questions?
Good.
Okay. I know it's chilled again. I know.
It actually feels good right here.
I'm
because it's
trying.
hot back
Yeah, no, it again, it feels like a meat locker up here. I'm looking for the sides of beef hanging in the corner. All right, if there's no other questions, I
This is
will.
not an action item.
It is not an action
Right?
item. This
Okay.
is
No need to
for.
approve.
We have one more that needs action real quick.
Okay, yep, that's item number 16. Possible discussion and possible authorization to enter into the First Amendment to joint funding agreement with the state of Nevada and Washoe County and the cities of Reno and Sparks and Fernley to fund their share of the the Federal Water Masters Annual Truckee River Operating Agreement. And I had some questions on this, Mr. Houck, because it only gave, as I read through the staff report, I didn't see any numbers of what our responsibility is. I only saw percentages.
Yeah, that's not a staff report. I wanted to just make this real brief. I can break out the percentages.
Okay, go ahead.
For you
Yep,
real
please.
quickly. So in 2019, this board approved and entered into a joint funding agreement with the cities of Reno, Sparks, Washoe County, and the city of Fernley to fund Nevada's share of TROA administration expenses.
Okay.
Nevada's portion is 40% of the total, And Tumwa is on the hook for 60% of Nevada's share,
That,
as you
okay.
know. So that was a 3-year agreement that covered the Water Masters fiscal year 2019, 20, and 21. That 3-year agreement is up. We needed to make an amendment to it to fund the next 3 years, the next 3 fiscal years.
Okay. What are the numbers? You're asking for percentages. Is it
so
bigger than a
it's-
bread box, smaller than a Empire State Building? I mean, what are the numbers? How much, I
The
mean,
budget, the proposed budget, total budget, this year, 2022, was 1.5, and then it's 1.6 for the next year, 1.7 for 2024.
okay,
Our
so,
portion of that is about 370,000 this year, this fiscal year.
okay, do you have an idea of the total number? 370,000, so it's about a million total? Million two?
Nevada's share or Tumwa's share?
Tumwa's share. I only
Tumwa's
care
share is
about
about
Tumwa's share.
370,000.
For all 3 years?
Oh, no, that's just 1 year.
Again,
So I'm sorry, yeah, 360, 380, and then 400,000 in 2024.
okay.
So
So a
360 this year.
little
about
over
360.
a million, million one, million two,
Yes.
something like that?
Yes.
Okay. That's my question, is what the ongoing expense is. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. What do you need a motion from us?
We just need an emotion to approve, and I think you'll have to sign.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Breckus, second by Ms. Stewart. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. That takes us to item number 17, GM report. Anything, Mr. Manager?
Just congratulations to the staff for the upgrade to AAA by Fitch Ratings. We
Oh,
have
yeah, I saw
never,
that, yes.
ever had a AAA rating in our almost 21-year history.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So this is a big deal. And also the, the hard work that went into the application for the $3 million grant that was included in the
Okay.
omnibus bill that was passed by President Biden yesterday. A huge amount of work from our natural resources staff and also our federal lobbyist, Marcus Faust, and Olivia Sanford in his office. So great work by everybody there. Some really good news on those two fronts. Thank you.
Okay, well done. Yes.
One request. Could you include in your general manager reports a outline of where Tumwa has decided at any given time to have staging operations for construction if they're on private property? I've got one going on in my ward right now that, and I know everyone wants to go through and stage on, vacant lots, and there's not as many as there used to be. But when you stage on a vacant lot in a neighborhood, it results in umpteen calls to the representative about what's going on there. And often they're as close as you can to where you're doing line work, but that would just be very helpful to me. And I know, I'm going to have a conversation with Reno about how they permit those for temporary use, but it would just be helpful to know where you're staging, if you're staging in, large private areas. So, thank you.
I made the call myself to Mark on the same topic.
Okay. All right, very good. We'll close item number 17 and take it to item 18. That's public comment. Is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? Who do we have? Mr. Enlow. Another 3 minutes. We will, now, this time you'll see your timer. Go ahead.
I had most of you, remember Jordan, you weren't here for this, but I was just, like I said, fired up on the National Water Reuse Conference. But the point I wanted to make in all of that was I wanted to challenge you to challenge your staff to really expand their mindset, because our water reclamation facilities will be our future water supply for this community in the not too distant future. So any improvements that they make, Stumwharf, Tumwharf, Cold Springs, wherever, they need to be thinking that this is eventually going to be the source water for the community's drinking water supply. And I just wanted to mention really quick, part of the American Flat Grant application to the Bureau that we mentioned. This is just an excerpt from Mauricia Baca, so the state director from the Nature Conservancy, okay, a letter of support for American Flat. Finding solutions to improve water security is important for ensuring the availability of this precious resource for nature and people to avoid situations like dry wells, reduced river flows, and the decimation of critical habitats and species. By using highly treated wastewater to recharge the groundwater aquifer, the project provides an innovative approach to improve groundwater availability without placing added pressure on limited water supplies. So I just wanted to say, I mean, water recycling, it is water conservation. And if we all work together, and I was particularly encouraged with the discussion in the hallway with Mervyn Wright after the first meeting, that if we all work together, recycling, including potable reuse, can be good for the environment and all of the water interest on the Truckee River.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? I will close public comment, bring it back to the board. That takes us to item number 19, board comments. Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to ask for staff to bring back a climate study and see if it can take place in parallel to the general manager recruitment and what that looks like for the board consideration. The other thing I would like to ask is just what is the proper process for the board to understand issues that are brought up by staff members and how are those vetted? How does the board understand if these issues are being dealt with? That's very important for me, and I'm hoping other board members to understand. So I'd like to see that on a future agenda as well.
Okay, anything else?
I just would support those issues, and I guess I would add, Ms. Hill, when you say bring back, I think you mean ready for action, not just discussion. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Dewar. That's
Just
that's
if-
what I meant.
I don't know whether that's how we do our rules. Historically, what we do is we bring back an item that asks for an agenda item. That's in these kinds of issues.
Well, I think she's asking for the agenda item, and so, I don't know, it's more of a bring back a proposal.
I guess what I'd like
she
to know, like to understand is what the scope is. And of a climate study. I mean, I want to know more about that. I want to understand the agencies that would do that kind of a study. I want to understand the length of time that it would historically take, the depth of that study, and how it would occur. So I mean, I think that there's a lot of things that would be involved in that, and I think we need to have a discussion with a full board, including the city of Sparks.
100%. I'm only suggesting that all of that would be part of the agenda item, as well as it could be stylized for possible action. So in case the board wanted to take action, they could,
Okay.
based on what they learned from the staff's presentation.
Thank you. I agree with that.
Okay, anything else?
We stated an intent to, for the first time in since Tumwa's origination, go out for RFP for legal services, correct? Was that the discussion?
The request last time was to bring options in regard to
Okay.
representation at the board meetings,
Okay,
is what my recollection
okay.
is.
Is that
and
coming on the April agenda or?
It will probably be on the May agenda.
Oh, on the May agenda. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned.